Let's go.
Good evening, ladies and gents. And for the first time ever, I get to say these words. Welcome to the Live Lounge. There is no Bill Bars tonight. The Ginger Mess is up in Newcastle. There's no Jarlath Eaton. He is scoffing his face in the background somewhere, doing all the touchy bits, so I can just concentrate on chatting. But there is Lee and Luke here tonight to, firstly, live react to the World Championship draw. Christmas is nearly here, boys. And then do our usual 2 hours of reviewing nonsense, looking forward to other stuff. A week in darts. We should be announcing the competition winners from last week tonight. This is where Jar panics because in the background he's got to go and get me those names. And yeah, from there. So, boys, first of all, how are we? Lee, I'll start with you.
Yes, all good, mate. All good. Looking forward to the draw. Very excited. It's the start of Christmas, isn't it, when the draw's made for me? So I'm really looking forward to the draw and seeing what ties we have and then potential ties we have for round two.
Indeed, indeed. And Luke, there is a lot of pressure on your shoulders tonight, buddy, because neither myself or Lee pay for Sky Sports. So you are the furthest ahead in how we currently peruse that selection of television, which means that you are going to be telling us the names as they pop up. And myself and Lee are going to be reacting to them for the first part of this show. No pressure, buddy, but how are we?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, this is my audition for John McDonald's role. So if I get this right, who knows? Maybe Sky will be on the phone soon enough. But yeah, honestly, the draw day is obviously really exciting. I cannot wait for this. We've got some brilliant names in the international qualifiers this year. So hopefully, even first round, we should have some really good ties. So really looking forward to this. And yeah, long time since I've been on the Live Lounge. So looking forward to a bit of chat about just about darts in general and getting ready for the World Champs.
It is indeed. I did notice you have been in the Live Lounge before, though, because the other week when I was looking for how many times Lee has been on the show, I noticed your face pop up a couple of times. So this isn't a debut for anybody. It's a debut on the software. As you can see, this is normally what we use for the Fallout bar, which means we can flash up your comments, hello messages, and the like up on screen, or at least Jar can. No pressure, mate. I'm really going to work you tonight. We're giving it a go to see how it works, and I'm gonna make you work for it. I'm gonna make you earn it. Basically, that's how it works. Now will be a good time to start saying hello to people in the chat room. Hello to Daniel, as you are the first comment at the bottom. Hello to Juanita, who says good morning, because obviously she is watching in Australia and everything's upside down. Hello to Rose. Hello to Jim. Hello to Kieran. Andrew's in. Someone called Lee Borges is in the chat room. Fraud. Just basically saying hello all around. Charlie's in. Charlie, super job earlier this afternoon with Jar. You made that one bearable, mate. No 9 data, though. I noticed. No 9 data, yeah. Everyone was smug enough. No gobble will get a 9. No, we bloody won't.
That hurts, doesn't it, mate? That hurts.
No, can you tell by I'm not hurt by it at all. There's absolutely no malice in the tone of my voice right now, is there? Can you tell? Plenty in the chat room, though, saying hello. You guys can live watch this draw on Sky Sports News. I think it's about 7:15 in the UK, so adjust that to wherever you guys are. Andrew says if you have Virgin Media TV, it's free on that, which is very good to know. And there's talk of it also being on the PDC Facebook page as well. Boys, I'm going to do a bit of magic. I'm going to try to. These are the numbers for the draw. Look at that. Jordan, you would see that one coming. Magic. These are the numbers for the draw. Obviously, how the draw works is the seeded players are already in position. A player from the Pro Tour list will draw a player from the International Qualifier list in the first round, and the winner of that will then take on one of the seeded players as we make our way through some very interesting names in there, particularly around the mid-50 section. I have my eyes cast on those. Fabian Schmutzler, Fallon Sherrock, and Toyakazu Shibata. That is a very interesting part of the draw, especially for me to try and pronounce, guys. Before the draw gets underway, let's take a couple of minutes just looking at these numbers and trying to match up some potential ties. What do you boys want to see? And quite frankly, what don't you want to see? What is a midweek Tuesday game? Get it on first and get it out the way. Not to just throw people under the bus. That's how I do. So, anything standing out for you there, Lee?
John Norman, obviously, is an evening game because I just want to see that.
Just want to see him bounce around.
Yeah. How much fun would that be against? I'm just checking where he is. And then someone like number 17, Ricky Evans. That'd be a lot of fun on stage, wouldn't it?
Plenty of messing around in that one from Ricky, unless he's got his serious head on. I mean, John Norman Jr. is the obvious one from the right-hand side just because of the antics we've seen on stage from him previously. John Part, his partner at the World Cup of Darts that year, and it was certainly an interesting watch. Luke, any standing out for you?
Well, I'm really looking for the Rodriguez brothers. So I think Robbie John and Rusty Jake, looking out for where they come out the draw because I think they're a big, big danger to any of the seeds. If Schmutzler ends up drawing Rusty Jake Rodriguez, we could see a head-to-head for the EU Development Tour, the top two in that ranking system. And I think that could be really interesting. They could prove a huge threat. But to be honest, anybody, even inside the top 8, I think even the likes of Go and Price could end up dropping a set or two against either of them two. So that could be a really interesting game. I think both are quite exciting players, but one that everyone is tipping is what happens if Fallon Sherrock ends up drawing Suljevic again in round 2. Oh, the scenes. He will never sleep again if he draws Fallon Sherrock. So I'm sure he'll be watching the draw with definite attention on that number 55.
Luke, is that with playing Ted in first round and Mensur second? Is that the plan in your head there?
Oh,
mate?
I tell you what, if that happens again, I think you get some good odds on that. But yeah, I think Fallon Sherrock, she's a big danger, and obviously she's the big draw this time round. Everyone's going to be looking for her name coming out. But let's see what Lisa Ashton can do. Number 33 as well. She's played quite well on the Pro Tour. She's going to be a bit of a danger and hopefully trying to get a TV win under her belt after that win against Beanie earlier on in the year.
Plenty of debutants in the list as well, folks. Roman Benecke, the Czech player, he's in there. I'm scrolling down through who else has never been to the Palace. Any others stand out for you? Juan Francisco Rodriguez, has he been to the Palace before?
Don't think so.
He hasn't. He's never played before. And I'm excited to see both Kai Smith and Raymond Smith from the DPA system, father and son combo. We've not seen that before. We'll have to see how they both perform in the World Championship. It is obviously a new one. Not heard too much about either of them, but we've heard Kai is quite a good player, so potentially proves a bit of a threat for one of the Pro Tour names.
It does. Imagine, at the start of the year, you'd have got good money on there being a father and son combination at the World Championships after John Brown and Steve Brown were both competing through the UK. Didn't quite expect it to come from New Zealand, though, Luke.
No, you're completely right. Exactly. I mean, it was a shame that neither of them managed to make it through the Pro Tour qualifier today. Both have had pretty solid years, and John Brown's UK Open was fantastic. So a bit of a shame not to see him there. But yeah, you would have got good money on these two making it. So it's interesting. And who knows, these unknown quantities that we've not really seen on TV before can prove to be huge threats. We saw it with Reyes not long since at the World Championship when he made the last 16 and knocked out Wes Newton. So there is a few people that can come as a bit of a surprise. We'll have to see whether one of these two can spring a shock in that first round and get themselves a shot at one of the seeds.
We will do indeed. Lee, any extra thoughts from you before we take a look at the qualifier today? Let's look at the last people that made it through the door. I'm just trying to get that event up on Dart Connect now.
Yeah, there's some names I'm looking at, and someone like a Matt Campbell in the international qualifiers, highly spoken about a lot of the time, but then underperformed at the Slam. So it's going to be interesting to see someone like that on the stage, someone like Hempel as well, who we saw had the one at the European Championship. So there's certainly some names in there that more than overly excited about, or the flip side of that, I'm thinking more of a negative. It's looking to see how they now perform and either now push on or see if they can lift that standard then. So there's a lot of names in there, and it's going to be a very, very interesting draw. And lining up perfectly to it, with the form of the 3 players who have come through today.
It is indeed. Right, I was going to try and get you who qualified today or how they did it and have a quick chat about that. But it looks like Sky are about to go to the draw after the ad break that's on TV at the minute. And also, Dark Connect is doing that weird thing where it's not in the list of archived events. So unless you've got the link from earlier, I cannot find it, which is a little bit frustrating. 2 minutes before the draw is live, boys. But if you're one of the players now sat watching, this is the bit where you get a little bit nervous because there is such a weighting to the World Championships in terms of financial rewards, £7.5 just for turning up. A nice little draw here can pocket you some serious money and turn your career around, as Devon Peterson has proven in the past.
Yeah, well, I'm with you definitely. It's not just that draw, like I said, it's a seeded and what sort of water. There's some that are looking very tasty. There's some that there's some seeds that you're probably looking at thinking that's who you're hoping you end up if you can get through your first round game. So there's certainly a lot to keep your eye on with the draw. I can just see on my screen, I know Luke's in front of us, but I can see Emma's now on. So the draw is only a couple minutes away.
It is indeed. I mean, your screen is far, far ahead of mine, Luke. So we're going to rely on you as soon as they do get going. Once the balls are in the pot, I'm literally going to hand over to you to talk us through the draw. Myself and Lee will just pull plenty of weird little faces as we react to the potential ties, and then we'll take a deep dive into those afterwards. As Giles just put in the chat, as Fabrizio Romano would say, here we go. That means it's happening.
You can obviously imagine what they're showing on TV right now. It's falling short of 170. I'm sure we're going to see this another 10 to 15 times within the next 2 years. That's going to be on TV all the time. So they've got to build it up. But we're getting there. Actually,
I'm sure if you look close enough, I'm sure I'm in the background somewhere there, Luke. I know you was on about it earlier. I'm sure I'm in the background somewhere.
I am shocked that they've actually brought Fallon out to do the draw, so she could potentially draw herself an easy tie. There's going to be a little bit of hot and cold balls. If she ends up getting an easy draw, there's going to be a bit of stick, but we'll see what happens. We've got Wayne Mardle here as well, so here we go.
I did not know that Fallon was doing the draw. Me
neither. And now I'm a little bit. I don't think a player involved in it should be drawing the ball.
I don't think that either. This is a bit dodgy, really, but.
Standard Sky and PDC doing what they want. We've questioned draws throughout the year. Look, I get that Fallon is arguably the hottest ticket in darts right now. She's one of the most famous dart players on the planet. But for her to be potentially drawing herself out, I'm not convinced by this move.
I'm presuming she'll be doing the Pro Tour draw and Wayne Mardle will be doing the international qualifier, so she doesn't draw herself, but it's still a bit. A player shouldn't be involved in the draw, surely.
But no. I would be more inclined if she was already in the second round. So I was drawing the opponents and not so much drawing her game. The fact she's drawing her game, this clip could come back and backfire. She's also giving us an immediate reaction, which I'm sure we might see a few weeks down the line if she then loses first round. Or potentially second, depending on who she gets. So, yes, very, very strange.
Dylan says Fallon isn't drawing the ball. That's good.
Searle along the way.
Spend 30 seconds talking about it. So, thank the Lord. That is the case. Obviously, we are watching on mute because we don't want.
But first of all, let's remind you what happened last year when Gerwyn Price was champion.
Yeah, we're currently just flashing back to highlights of Gerwyn Price. So they're just doing a little bit of stalling, but we'll get in there. Well, not long now.
So is Wayne drawing both pots? Oh, Colin Lloyd is doing the draw. I didn't think that Mardle had
okay. I apologise. I've got my earphones in. I can't hear what's going on.
Look, we're relying on you here, mate.
She was stood next to the pots, It was an easy judgment to make.
It's an interesting place to bring her out and put her next to be fair. Let's go stick her next to Wayne Mardle at the stand where they're about to draw the balls out. Yeah.
Just one thing, though, to bring up while they are around in the reel. One thing I can't wait for is that venue to be packed to then for a World Championships. We didn't have it last year. We had one night of social distance. But to have it back this year, fingers crossed, with every session near enough sold out, if not sold out already. It's the World Championships is proper back this year, isn't it? With a crowd in there, it made it a lot better.
Can you touch wood while you say that? Because I'm not entirely convinced by the UK government's ability to ensure that this is going on. Because are just very, very inept, and I've heard plenty of things over the last couple of days, especially as we are about to have yet more restrictions in the UK. There's the question from Dylan. You think with this new variant it'll be full crowds? We're all hoping so. I think this is very precautionary, very early. And if they find that.
Here we go. We've got Colin Lloyd. He's next to the balls.
Yes.
We're ready.
Why did they not bring Lloydie out to chat to Fallon instead of Wayne? We all know which one we'd rather look at.
I'm going to miss Colin Lloyd not being at the seniors. I know he's got a couple of years left before he's 50, but I hope Jaws gets himself out there in a couple of years' time. It'd be nice to see him back on telly.
Him and Wayne, I think they're eligible in the same calendar year.
Are they? Okay.
I believe so.
There's a lot of stalling. Sky Sports are really good at this. I mean, we've been on... These have been out for the last 5 or 6 minutes. Come on, get on with it. Let's see this draw.
Just sit in anticipation.
Dob, just very quickly, and Luke, while we're waiting, international qualifier, one person who you'd want to avoid. Same with Pro Tour of Merit.
Good question.
Luke, feel free to interrupt if the draw does start. But if there's one player to avoid in the international qualifiers and also one in the Pro Tour.
For me, I would say Schindler from the international qualifiers. If he turns up and plays his game, I think he can play it. He is dangerous. And look, it is the obvious pick, but Callum Ridge is worthy of being in the top 16, so he's a huge danger. If you draw him from the Pro Tour qualifiers, then that is worrying.
I don't want to be anywhere near Raymond van Barneveld.
Yeah.
Something about the man at World Championship, and I don't want to be anywhere near Paul Lim.
Okay, we're getting into this now, guys. Right, Colin Lloyd has drawn the first ball. Here we go. Number 10. It's Richie Edhouse against number 61, which is Li Hao Wen, the Chinese qualifier. That's to play going price.
Is it in seed order? So next one.
It is. It's in seed order, yes. So Steve Beaton is out next. To play Fallon Sherrick, Beaton against Sherrick.
Oh, staying
what a game.
The winner plays Hybrex in that one in the
Winner plays Hybrex.
Same section as Durbin Price.
3 matches away from a Fallon versus.
Number 2, it's Ross Smith, who's had a really good year on the Pro Tour. Against 58, Jeff Smith. Battle of the Smiths. That's a good little game for a first round.
That's a very tidy little first round matchup.
Number 26, Jermaine Watamina.
Not had the best year.
He plays 39. Boris Koltsov. So another good game for a first round. That could be tight.
With the winner to play dirt in that one as well.
Yes.
Very tasty port of that.
Keen Barry is out next to play 42. Royden Lamb. These games are really good. Good quality.
Bam, Royden Lamb. What a name.
These could be exciting. Number 24 is Louis Williams. Young Welsh star who's come good this year.
There are plenty of youngsters in this draw, and that is refreshing to see, by the way.
Louis Williams plays Toyokazu Shibata. I hope I've got that right. So here we go. That could be another one.
No worse than how I tried to pronounce it. So,
Ron Moulenkamp is out next.
This is one I wouldn't want to play.
Lisa Ashton. I think he's beatable. So Lisa Ashton might fancy her chances, but that could be another. Let's see. Could be a tight draw.
Is that to play Michael Smith?
Believe so.
So this is the one you'd potentially want to be on, I'm guessing.
William O'Connor is out next against Danny Lauby, who was obviously played well at the World Cup. Absolutely rapid player and potentially could make himself on the Pro Tour next year. So let's see that. Another one.
I have to play Glenn Doran.
Yes.
That's a horrible little tie for Glenn, I think.
Mike Kivenhoven.
This one's for Wade.
My boy.
Plays against Kai Smith, the youngster that we've just talked about from Oceania. So this is to play Van der Voort this next tie. Adam Hunt, Northeast lad. Plays Boris Karchmar, who's come through the qualifier today. Played well, hasn't quite done himself justice so far.
Today, by the way.
Yeah, he is playing well.
On average in his first round game. That man did not want to give up his tour card.
As a non-seed, this is the quarter you want to be in, I think.
To play Cullen, Ted Everts,
the new
World Youth Championship, against Jim Williams. That's a really good first round tie. Really good tie.
It's not nice for Joe, that.
It's not nice for any of the three. That's a very competitive part of the draw.
Martine Clairmacher. I believe this is to face Simon Whitlock, if I've heard right.
Yes, mate.
Clairmacher will play John Michael, so hopefully a chance for him to get redemption for last year and get himself a tie with Whitlock.
The Deadly Rose. Give Dimmy a run for his money on the dancing floor.
Florian Hempel, who's had a good year.
Rose's eyes just lit up in the chat room.
Martin Schindler, a Battle of the Germans. That's a harsh tie. That is a harsh tie.
Is that to play Dimmy?
I believe, yeah. Jamie Hughes, up and down, against Raymond Smith.
Winner of that to play Devon.
That might be an afternoon match.
If you're both of them, you'd fancy that, though.
Yeah, I think all three in that one. We talked about
Steve Lennon, Irish talent, obviously made the World Cup of Darts final not long since. Against Madars Razma. That's a difficult tie. He's one of the better international qualifiers, Razman. Has performed really well.
Another of Dobbs' boys now, isn't it? Mervyn Kings.
Please, Merv.
Ryan Joyce. That's a tough tie. Ryan Joyce is playing well.
The man's not going to win the match.
Against Roman Benecki, the Czech Republic qualifier. Don't know too much about him, but it could be.
I hadn't heard Roman Benecki's name until about 6 weeks ago, and now he's in the World Championship, and he looks a very, very solid player.
Ryan Meikle will play. Meikle plays Schmutzler. Now, I don't think that's an easy tie for him. We know he's been playing well, Schmutzler, in that last EU development tour. So
the winner of that
surprise package.
The winner of that to play Peter Wright.
Yes. Luke Woodhouse is out next to play. James Wilson, who came through the qualifier today. I think both players will fancy their chances in that one. That could be a good game.
Agree on that.
William Borland is out next to play number 35. Bradley Brooks, another youngsters tie. There is a lot of young lads in this draw.
Yeah.
That'd be a good game, that. It might not be the ton plus averages, but it'll be competitive, and they'll bounce off each other, those two.
Jason Heaver on debut will play Juan Francisco Rodriguez. Two unknown quantities, really, on a world stage.
Mm-hmm.
Number 32, Jason Lowe, last of the Pro Tour qualifiers to face
J. Lowe. Arguably, should have had wins over Van Gerwen and Gerwin Price in Minehead in the last 2 years.
Lowe will face Daniel Larsson from Sweden. Another one, both players probably fancying their chances.
And neither player will be rushed.
Number 7 is Alan Suter. Started the year really well. Maybe he's held up a little bit. He'll play Diogo Portela.
Ooh.
Little interesting one, that one.
There seems to be plenty of the low numbers remaining. Rids, Barney, Lewis, Scott Mitchell.
Aspinall is going to face either Joe Mernon, 27th on the Pro Tour Order of Merit this year, or number 46, which is Paul Lim. So Joe Mernon against Paul Lim. Paul Lim could yet make a round 2, and he could be a tricky customer for Nathan Aspinall. This is to face Dolan, who made the semi-finals this weekend of the Players' Championships in really good form. Callan Rids, that's a horrendous draw, no matter who faces. Either Callan Rids or Yuki Yamada to face Brendan Dolan. So, tricky little game for him. To face MVG.
For Rids.
This has got to be Barney.
If this is Barney, it's not Barney, it's number 29. It's Chaz Barstow or John Norman Jr. Oh, if John Norman gets through that and plays MVG, that would be possible. We're all wanting to see that.
Contrasting characters there.
Chaz obviously playing really well in the online darts live league this year. 23. Rusty Jake Rodriguez. I think he's one of my hot prospects for the Pro Tour, so this is an interesting one. Who has he got? It's Ben Robb from New Zealand.
Play Dolby.
Here we go. We've got number 9, Darius Labanauskas.
There we go. Some low numbers are in. I'm predicting 41, Nitin Kumar.
It's 47. It's Charles Losper from South Africa. So this is to face Luke Humphreys.
Barney,
that's Dando.
It's not Barney. It's number 14. It's Rowby John Rodriguez against 38, which is Nick Kenny, who came through the qualifier. Another one, you know what? Not many of these matches do look like afternoon matches. There's some really good ties here. I'm really excited for this.
Here's Barney.
Loves a last chance salute.
Number 5, Adrian Lewis. This is an interesting one. Let's see who we get.
To play Ando.
To play Ando. Against Matt Campbell. Oh my God.
What a section.
Oh, that's horrendous.
That's already my favourite part of the draw. And my least favourite at the same time, because I want all 3 of them to go flat.
Ian White will face number 6, Scott Mitchell, or 43, which is Chris Landmann. A shot qualifier. Beat a few good Dutch players in the West Europe qualifier. So.
He looks steady at Q scoring, and we haven't heard a lot from Landmann since.
We've got a Barney alarm. Number 3, Raymond van Barneveld. Who has he got?
We'll take on
37, Elagan.
Number 37, Lawrence Elagan. Oh my God.
With a winner to play Rob Cross.
I believe, yeah.
I've got my favourite porter anyway.
This is banging.
Ricky Evans will play number 41 at Nitin Kumar.
What a quarter.
This is tidy.
Oh, Lawrence Elagan. Honestly, these Philippine lads cannot get. They just can't catch a break. They can't catch a break. The World Cup, they end up getting England or the Netherlands. Normal Lichdom got Peter Wright a few years ago. I really wanted to see Elagan go long, but look, that's a tie and a half. Barneveld against Elagan. Oh my God.
With this bottom quarter already having seeds of MVG, Dolby, Anderson, Rob Frost, to then have unseeded players of Barney and Adrian Lewis chucked into that quarter. Try and pick the quarter winner, never mind the World Championship winner, because that is ridiculous.
I mean, we've got a bit of recency bias because we're forgetting Ross Smith, Jeff Smith. Jeff Smith has definitely been unlucky to win the CDC Continental Cup. He's ended up with a much worse draw than he potentially would have got if he played in a national qualifier. So that is tough. Bunton is going to have his work cut out no matter who gets through there.
And
indeed.
Going back to just the draw early on, the Steve Beaton Fallon with a winner playing Kim Ibrat. Yeah. That's in the top 4. There's certainly some tasty toys, not just
Hempel against Schindler to play Dimitri van den Berg. That's a brilliant little section, that one.
For who? For us. Just for us.
In that bottom section too. Crikey.
Joyce facing a check for the second year in a row to potentially play Mervyn King. I think that could go 5 sets. That'll probably be an unnoticed one, but I think both players, Joyce and Mervyn King, are in good form. But let's see what Benecki can do.
like the look of the Ted Evans, Jim Williams game as well.
Yeah.
The winners by Joe Cullen, especially with Jim Williams having some impressive games at the Slam, and Evans obviously now the youth champion.
Right, I'll be honest, boys. I'm just waiting for somebody to post a graphic of that onto social media so we can steal it, flash it up on screen for everybody to digest. In the meantime, chat room, give me your instant reactions to that draw.
I think Suljevic goes out to Suter or Portela. I think both of those will definitely be fancying their chances the way he's played of late. So that could be a little dangerous tie. But that one that's just flashed up on the screen for us now, Adrian Lewis, Matt Campbell against Gary Anderson, and Raymond van Barneveld or Lawrence Lagen against Rob Cross is just ridiculous quality. We're really starting to see the 96 players come into their own because we're starting to see the quality filter through the system. I know there was a little bit of apprehension when we first expanded to 96, but now I think we're starting to see we've got enough good players to have some really cracking draws.
Enough. Let's say hello to a few people. Missy was late and we were midway through the draw, so we didn't get a chance to say hello to her. So hello, Missy. How are you? TJ said that was a good draw for Wade. John Denny v Schindler in a World Youth Final rematch. And Borland v Brooks is a quality scrap. It is indeed good for Sir. Suter vs Mensah. Beaton vs Sherrick. Going to be awesome. Look, it's been interesting over the last couple of weeks to see which player. It's very difficult to boo Mensah Suljevic, but he managed to get booed because he was playing Fallon Sherrick. Surely, boys, that Ali Pally crowd is not about to boo Sir Steve Beaton.
I hope not. I believe they will, but I hope not.
If they boo Steve Beaton, I say we just call off the Worlds. I think you've lost your right to attend the World Championship if you're booing Steve Beaton. I really feel for him because there's so many times that you see him on telly and he gets these hard draws. And to be honest, Sherrick's one of the harder draws he could have got for the international qualifiers. I feel like he's in for a bit of a ride there. He could get railroaded 3-1, 3-0, and it's just knocking him back further. I was really hoping he'd get at least a win under his belt, but that's a tough draw for the first round. And the way Steve's played this year, I think you've got to make Fallon quite a big favourite for that.
Indeed. Some early predictions from people then. Dylan says Cullen will make the semis this year. Hasn't been really deep in a major since that loss to Gary Anderson at the World Match Play, I believe. Jack, and they will be cursing the draw more so. Lewis, tough for both of them. And Andrew says Adrian Lewis versus Matt Campbell. That's going to be good. It is indeed. Matt Campbell, by the way, in action in the Live League this week. How good is it to have some international flair in that one, boys? I've also seen Sebastian Steyer, Thibaut Tricot, Campbell.
Jose was last week.
Who was?
We had Jose
last week, yeah. And there's plenty more to come to TJ. Section 3, I was ready to pick Brandon Dolan. Then he gets Callum Ridds. Ouch. Section 4, Lewis and Barney on the same side of the draw. Both could go on a run, but MVG still favourite. Pretty much. Harry, Section 2 is open. We'll give you the full draw as soon as we get an image to go up on that. Hempel Schindler will be a beauty. Completely agree, Bill, unless you are a neutral German, in which case you'll be watching it from behind your hands. Because that is a horrible draw for those two, arguably the two form German players in the world right now. Clemens has been involved in a lot, but he hasn't won a lot. Hempel looked very, very good on the Pro Tour when he's had the chance. Schindler at the Grand Slam.
Yeah, one looking at, I know we mentioned John Norman and how interesting that would be against MVG just to view it, but I think we put aside there how good Chaz Barstow's been this year. If Chaz Barstow can get through that first game and show a bit of form, then going into Michael van Derwen with that one down behind him, certainly makes it a very, very interesting tie for a different reason than if it's John Norman. But he certainly tests him a lot more, I would say. And Chaz Barstow, if he can come through that as I would expect, that's not an easy start for MVG, or not as easy as you probably would have liked for round 2.
No, I think you're completely right. I mean, if we take away the box office factor of John Norman, I don't really expect him to average above 90. So Chaz is going to win it. And I think, to be honest, if he plays MVG and he turns up with his A game, he's got no pressure on him. Nobody's expecting him to go out and smash MVG to pieces. But I think that could be a really interesting little game. And yeah, you're right. I think MVG will get tested. And if he doesn't turn up with his A game, his B game might not be enough.
Interesting. I'm still waiting for the PDC to fire a graphic out, boys. So if you do see one, holler, and then we can go through the rest of the draw in detail. Juanita Hatter has a good run to meet Peter Wright in the 3rd round, but Damon looked very good at times earlier this week. The full draw is now live on our website, thanks to Jar in the background. Nearly 10, well, nearly 10 or 10. If you've got nearly 10, then you've got 9 or less.
What that might be saying is there's 9, but the 10th is coming from that quarter this year. That's what that might be saying, Dob.
We spent a lot of time at the weekend discussing potential ridiculous runs to go and win the Players' Championship final. If the winner comes from that part of the draw, in particular, if it's Gary Anderson or Rob Cross.
Hardest run for the World Championship ever, potentially, on the cards.
Quite possibly, boys. I don't think we'd be against saying that. You'd run into Michael Van Gerwen before you get out of the quarter. Then who'd be top seed from above that? Is it Wade or is it
Peter Wright, wouldn't it?
Snakebite, and then potentially Gerwin Price in the final, the defending champion.
That's incredibly tough.
What a ridiculous run that. I mean, we're plotting draws for something that we just can't see just yet, but we are going to talk about that a lot more in depth shortly.
I'm honestly, the draws get me so excited, but I cannot believe Lewis has got Anderson potentially, and Barney's got Rob Cross. What are the chances of the 32 players? It's insane. We're going to have some really good first round ties, and that just sets the draw. It's so good for building up the hype. I think this year's draw, it's really got me excited.
Definitely. Phil Bowers has arrived, ladies and gents.
Yeah.
With no right out Guess which players Phil wants to do work. No, I'm joking. Look, if they do well, it's good for us because everybody wants to see stories involving Gerwin Price, and in particular his Instagram. He said some interesting things today. We'll get to that more later in a week in darts, and obviously Fallon Sherrick is, as has been said quite frequently at the minute, possibly the most famous dart player in the world right now. People that don't know darts are talking about Fallon. I'm not sure that's. Where do we go from here, boys? I'm still waiting on the draw.
Raven just asked a really good question. I don't know if you've seen that in chat, Gob. Who replaces Charles Losbert if he can't make it out of South Africa? If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's one of the 3 players that lost in the PDPA qualifier today. But
yes. A list posted earlier, I believe. I think
Mike Dedetta's reserve 1, but it is the 3 from today. I believe Dedetta's 1.
Because that is becoming a more likely situation, especially with what's happening with COVID. So Mike Dedecker may well make the World Championship after all.
I'm sure it was tweeted somewhere earlier, but I could not find it. Let's come back to the draw, boys, because it's not up yet. Philip Wall says Dedecker first. I was looking for his tweets. It was very, very good earlier on today. We're going to come back to the draw. We are going to look back at the Players' Championships from the weekend. We're just going to do the final day of action, boys, because we did do fallout bars throughout. We will come back to the World Championships draw. We will just let it simmer for a bit. You guys can take it in. Once we get a graphic up, we'll go back to that as well. But we are going to cover all of the Players' Championships or the last day of action in particular.
Dob, sorry, just very quickly, I've got that tweet that was sent out earlier by Philip. So the 5 reserves in order are Dedecker, Dolan Mathers, Hudson, Dizwan, and then Andy Bolton.
In that order, you have been told. I've also just got the graphic for the World Championship. But we've committed to the Players' Championship now. Just fire it into the back end. We will come back to the William Hill World Darts Championship once we have looked back at the final day of action from the Players' Championship Finals in Minehead. Dan's in the chat room from the team. He was down there for the entire week as a fan. Jarlath and Phil were also down there covering all of the action. Juanita, you're an absolute star. Thank you very much. I have that from you. But boys, let's look at all 4 quarterfinals, then the 2 semi-finals, and the final, starting with Brendan Dolan beating Jose de Souza 10-4. What a result that is for Brendan Dolan, as he continued on his march this weekend, averaging 94. Pretty good for Brendan this week, because he won the rest of his games pretty much with a 90.
Yeah, done by Dolan, very assured on his doubles. Disappointing from Jose. Didn't see him start the week well against Devon. Come for a bit of a scrappy game. And then coming into that, what a win it was by Brendan. Really, like I said, it's just assured. Got that bit of a lead, and then he looked in total control. And as we've seen, overall a very good weekend from the Irishman.
It was indeed. Luke, let's touch on Jose quickly. We know that he struggled since he had his second COVID jab. He's admitted that he hasn't quite been the same player. He's been trying to work his way back up, said that he was looking like he was on his way back. Still doesn't look like he is quite there. Perhaps this World Championships is just going to come a little bit too early for the Portuguese man of scores for him to be a real contender.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it's a little bit cause and effect. I mean, I'm not with him all the time, so I don't know how effective he's been by this COVID jab. But it is a shame that his form's dipped at this time of year. You know, we're coming up to all the major tournaments, and he's just not been able to perform how he wanted to, and obviously couldn't defend his Grand Slam and darts title. To be honest, the way he's played this weekend, he managed to win a few scrappy games and managed to get himself in the quarterfinals, but he never had the form that was capable of winning the tournament. And I think, you know, if he's only averaging sort of 94, 95, yeah, they're only a guide, but at the same time, it's not going to win you the World Championship. So he could struggle. Hopefully he can get a first round win, a second round win under his belt, and then potentially get into the first to 4 sets format. Maybe that suits him a little bit better than a short, sharp first 3 sets, but we'll see. I think, yeah, it was scrappy against Brendan. He didn't look comfortable, and I think he's still slowly rebounding. But he's definitely, if he turns up and plays his game, he's always a danger. And for me, I think he's still winning a shout of the Premier League, but the way he's ended the year hasn't been brilliant.
Correct. Perhaps, like I just said, perhaps it's come in just that little bit too early for him. Ryan Searle defeating Daryl Gurney 10-9 in the second quarter final. Boys, Ryan Searle just loves winning. He got away with a lot this weekend, but he made the most of it. And this is another one of those occasions where he just scrapes over the line against Daryl Gurney.
Yeah, straight over the line with a 101 average. So good. Early on, I'm sure he survived 5 starts, I think, in the first couple of rounds, match darts, and then pushed on as the weekend. But this was such a good game between him and Durney, and to flip that as well, Daryl Durney looked gooder than this weekend. There was some on the second stage, saw some of the numbers there, and he was throwing some good stuff. Looked like he's getting back to what we've seen Durney do, and seen him obviously win the players before. It's going to be interesting seeing down into the Worlds, but for Ryan Searle, done enough to get through this one. Sneaked through it, as you've said, but 101 average from both players was a brilliant game. And for me, the game of this session, and I know it was a session that included Wright and MVG, but for me, it was a top-class game of 19 legs of darts.
It was indeed. Luke, a quick word on Gurney. Look, we're going to do quick words on everybody that gets knocked out, because obviously, because they played on the same day, we have to talk about the winners a lot more shortly. So a word on Daryl Gurney after wins against Marco Smith and James Wade in earlier rounds. Lee touched on it there potentially about him being on his way back. He's still got that odd little bit of inconsistency about his game, especially before this weekend. But a determined and performing well Daryl Gurney is good for the sport. He is a former major champion after all.
Yeah, he really seems to enjoy the Players' Championships, doesn't he? I thought he could potentially repeat the trick this weekend, especially after a really close tie and win against Michael Smith. And then when he did the job against James Wade, you were really starting to think then potentially dreams do come true. He is coming into form, and let's be honest, Daryl Gurney's top A game is 100-plus average, and it's really good to watch. He's got a level that's potentially far superior to some of the guys that are just inside the top 32, but unfortunately his B game isn't quite where it needs to be within the top 10 all the time if he's not playing at that A standard. So it is exciting to see him back, and I think he pushed Searle all the way. He's really come into some sort of form, and the World Championship, you can never rule him out. He's always got talent, and he is a danger to anyone within the draw. So I'm excited to see him playing well. Obviously, he's probably not going to get into the Premier League or the Masters. He needs to perform quite well and keep himself within the sort of top 24 range, but if he can turn up and win a couple of games at the World Championship, that could do in the world of good, and then we'll see what happens next year for Daryl Gurney.
Well, a couple of games, and then you're firmly into the tournament, and he's got caliber. Let's not forget, potentially should have beaten Gerwyn Price last year. He should have beaten the eventual world champion, Daryl Gurney, running him close at the Ali Pali last year. Third semi-final, boys, and Luke just touched on it. Lee touched on it, saying that the previous game was the game of the session, despite Peter Wright's return to form against his arch nemesis, Michael van Gerwen. Can you tell the excitement in my voice when I say that? Peter Wright beating Michael van Gerwen 10-6, Luke, in pretty impressive fashion from Snakebite.
Yeah, those two, that rivalry lives long, doesn't it? They're maybe not the best of friends, but it's always interesting to watch. And it was another good one. You never really know which way it's going to go with Peter. If he turns up and does play with the correct equipment and plays his game, he can really challenge Matt van Gerwen. And he held him at arm's length the whole game. MVG was another one that was hotly tipped to win this weekend, and Peter Wright just got the better of him. So he's coming into form just at the right time. And surely, as he quite rightly said within his post-match interview with us, that I think he is potentially the favourite for the World Championship now. He's definitely, he should be, shouldn't he?
Got to change darts at least 6 times now and then, despite actually sticking with the same ones all weekend. Look what happens when Peter Wright picks a set and sticks with it. And if I'm not mistaken, they were the same darts that won him the World Match Play in such emphatic fashion. I genuinely don't think we've seen such a commanding margin of victory for a long, long time at a tournament such as the World Match Play. Not since Philip Douglas Taylor was on the scene, smashing people from pillar to post. Final quarter final then, boys, and it was a comprehensive win for Johnny Clayton against Vincent van der Voort. The Ferret just continuing where he left off. Wasn't the most impressive weekend from Clayton overall. I'll be honest, he looked like struggling a little bit in the early rounds, was scrappy in the first round. Alan Tabban, I think it was, potentially should have been departed by then. But he made the most of it. 10-3 victory over the big Dutchman. Comfortable from the Ferret.
Yeah, very comfortable from the Ferret. I'm surprised you've not mentioned in the previous statement that Wright made at the start of the year about MVG not winning a title in 2021, and the last title that he could have won of the year was Peter Wright, who made sure we didn't do that. But on to the fourth
series event. That counts, doesn't it?
Moving on to the fourth. To be honest, similar, I guess, to the loser in Game 2 with Gurney, Vincent van der Voort didn't show up in this one, but overall then for the weekend, not many would have tipped Vincent van der Voort to be in finals day, I don't think. He's not been great across the year. And then for Johnny Clayton, it wasn't a great weekend performance-wise, but in this one he was just in total control with Vincent. There wasn't great scoring or great finishing from him in this, but he'd done enough. And Vincent just wasn't at it on the final day, unfortunately, but good to see him get into the latter stages then.
Vincent van der Voort has, over the last year or so, become far more consistent in his game, I think. Don't get me wrong, he's had issues with his back injury and whatnot over the past couple of years, but he does seem to have added that base level to his game now. And I'm not going to sit here and suggest to you that Vincent van der Voort is about to become the next world champion. But he is more than capable of winning for a couple of rounds and potentially being one of those players that sneaks into a quarter final. He is that sort of player, and you won't believe he'll win it because he'll just sit there and tell you no, he doesn't believe that that's what he could do. But he'd be silly to go against him when he's on a roll, because he is a bit like a wrecking ball. Once he starts going, you cannot stop him. He is emphatic in that regard. Semi-final time, boys. And we start with the first one. We'll go in order. We're going to go all the way through. Then we're going to touch on any other talking points from the weekend, by the way, because obviously we do have some interesting things that happened on the way. We've got a clip of one of those to play for all you guys. We'll also touch on the Wild Youth Championship as a separate event afterwards. We won't do that in order. We'll keep going through the Players' Championship as it happened on day 3. Touch back on anything important from the first 2 days as well as a talking point, and then we'll do the Wild Youth Championship. Semi-final number 1. This was neck and neck for a large part of it to start the game, and then Ryan Searle broke the heart of Brendan Dolan and just went on a rampage to close out the match, Luke. Ryan Searle, in this moment, looked like a player that's been doing it for God knows how long in semi-finals up on the TV stage. It didn't affect him at all. Ran away with it towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing having the talent to go and make a TV semi-final, but it's quite another thing having the bottle to then continue as if nothing else is happening, that you're under no pressure and really go and do a demolition job on Brendan Dolan. It was quite a convincing victory at 11-6. It was really impressive, as you say. Ryan's obviously got the talent. We know that. The throw is so easy. It's one of the most relaxed throws in darts. But then to back it up, he just doesn't feel the pressure, and he really does keep pushing on. And I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that within the next 5 years he'll win a TV title. Maybe that's a big claim to make, but to be honest, I think it's nigh on a surefire deal. The way he's playing at the minute to make a final, and obviously we'll talk about that in a minute, but you know, he really had to do a job. Brendan Dolan, again, hasn't been there too often, so potentially a slightly easier tie on your mind. The fact that both of you are basically there for one of the first times, and you're both pushing to try and make that TV final, but it didn't faze Ryan Searle at all, and he played really well. You know, he was probably playing his B game against Dolan and still dismissed him, so it's exciting, and I think Ryan Searle will take a huge amount of confidence going into future tournaments from that result alone.
Bold claim, though, that he 100% wins a TV title. You look at other players that we've put in that category, even recently, by the way. Dirk van Dijvenbode and Michael Smith still not got over the line, really, unless you're Jara, who's trying to push the fact that MVG's won a TV title this year, which means so has Michael van Gerwen. Whatever suits your argument at the time, mate. Yeah, we know you're getting fouled. We've been here long enough. We know what you're like. In the chat room, we see the agenda of Jarlath. Look, convincing though. Been a good year for Brendan Dolan, boys. Solid on the Pro Tour, building his form back up on the TV. Let's not forget, 7 or 8 years ago, he was there or thereabouts as a top 16 player. Not quite got that level at the minute, but he is looking a lot sharper. And that sped up throw, I can't help but think has helped somewhat in that regard, Lee. Players that throw slowly, for me, spend way too much time thinking about the game, and that makes everything so much more mentally difficult than players that just get up and throw the dart. The scar tissue, if you like, they're just thinking about it so much more. It's so much more difficult to play a best of 11 if you're a slow player than it is a quick player. Yeah,
I'm with you on that. It's been a good year by Brendan, and if we're sort of excluding the world from this year, the way he's ended it, he's got a lot better, puts him in the position. The question marks would have been asked on Sunday, with him down into first aim when the schedule was released. His first aim after, you know, a big win over Derwin Price Saturday night. The question marks would have been on that first aim Sunday afternoon, and he got through that one convincingly. Yes, he didn't push on Searle. His percentage checked out, I think at the end of it was under 20%. It was a very poor checked out percentage. Then Searle, but overall, it's a very good run from someone who, yes, we know he had the great run in Ireland 10 years ago, but generally on TV hasn't had these sort of runs. So to see him get to the semi-final, and like it says, improve as the years gone on with the throw getting quicker. I was about to say quick throw, but that'd be taking the mic a little bit. It's a quicker throw, isn't it? But yeah, it's working, and you've got to see him now push on into the world and see what he can do in there. He's certainly a player who can cause damage. If that double 16 is in. He's a bit like Ryan Joyce in that aspect. As soon as that 16's looking good, you don't want to be leaving him on that because you know he's going to take it in 1 or 2. But one to watch in the world because he can cause damage against anyone.
If only he could leave that double 16 for a 9-darter, because he came incredibly close in this match. 2 legs in a row, man. I was like, what are you doing, man? Brendan, calm down. But was not to be this weekend. Plenty of 170s on show. The Big Fish, Fallon Sherrick is inspiring dart players up and down the country. Second semi-final. What? Second semi-final, boys. Peter Wright he's a bit good when he wants to be. 94 average in this one, but an 11-6 comfortable victory over Johnny Clayton. Snakebite out in front, 45% on the doubles, 156 highest checkout. I mean, the one tournament he hasn't promised us he's going to win. He told us he hates Minehead and found himself in the final relatively easy without being disrespectful. Again, a tough run, by the way.
Yeah, really tough run. He did play well all weekend. I think hate's a strong word for a tournament that's just won you £100,000. So maybe he'll revoke that comment since he's just
saying hates the venue, but he won the UK Opener, his first, and now he just won this one with his B game, basically, or for large parts of the tournament.
Exactly. And I mean, when you allude to the run, we're going Keen Barry, Adrian Lewis, Damon Hedder, who we obviously know has come good this year, Michael Van Gerwen, then Johnny Clayton, then Michael Van Gerwen, then Johnny Clayton, and then Ryan Searle. So no, he had a really tough run, probably one of the toughest you could possibly get. But there's not a lot to say about that semi-final against Johnny Clayton. Clayton was playing his B game. Wright turned up, played exactly how he needed to, stuck with the same darts, and that was a demolition job. And that's all you need to do. That's all Peter Wright needs to do. I don't know who needs to convince him to stick with the darts. We say this every time we come on the show, but yeah, it was a really good performance for him, and that's the sort of form that he needs to be on going into December, going for another World Championship.
If I ever meet Snakebite in person again, I'm just going to tattoo it on him somewhere. Use these darts so the man cannot forget it. But into the final, boys, and it was Peter Wright against Ryan Searle, and it was a fantastic final. 11-10 to Snakebite in the end, in the most dramatic fashion towards the back end of the game. Snakey takes the early lead. Searle hits back towards the back end, goes all the way. There's a 1-2-9 busted in there at one point. There's a crowd booing Peter Wright. I'm not sure if that is to do with the Adrian Lewis incident, the fact Ryan Searle's a local, or a combination of all of the factors, or people just wanting Ryan Searle to get over the line in his first one. But Peter Wright is your 2021 Players' Championship final winner. And as he has done so often this year, Lee, Snakey has the last laugh in the Players' Championship.
Yeah, he does. There wasn't great performances in there from Peter Wright throughout the weekend. Beforehand, I'd seen a tweet earlier today. I've only got the notes of the tweet, so I can't say who it was from. But Peter Wright being the first player since Devin Peterson to win the Players' Championship final without a single ton-plus average in one of his games. And he only averaged 92.58 across the tournament. However, he'd done the right things at the right times, which was sort of the opposite about the match play window. I'm not saying he didn't do the right things at the right time, but in that match play, he controlled it from game one onwards. With this one, it wasn't the fact of controlling it, but at times, and the perfect example of that was the winning dart. That 62, I've never seen anyone go for 62 with the first dart being nowhere near the treble. It was like he was literally setting it up as a single 10, single 20. Because he knew, and it was the confidence that's in Peter Wright across that weekend, that he knew that double 16 was Dolan. If you're going to place that in as your winning dart, what a place to put it. And I guess, as Bill's saying there, that 1-2-9, if there's going to be a turning point in a game, it was someone down 1-2-9 busting it and going for it again and missing double sits on the outside for Ryan Searle to take out some plus. You thought it's going to be that night. But Peter Wright, like I says, wasn't outstanding in regards to averages, numbers and that sort of thing, but there were certain things throughout the day. The 1-5 sit against Clayton, the bouncing back from busting his store and losing the lead, and then to that 62 finish, just showing that I'm not reluctant to say that he's the favourite to win the Worlds, but he's certainly in the mix. Whether he's the favourite because of the year that we've seen from Clayton and we know what Price and Van Derwin can do, he's certainly in the mix with those three, isn't he?
We don't know what they can do, but I'm going to push you on that in a little while. Luke, as we said, it wasn't the most dominant performance from Peter Wright this weekend. Obviously, we are comparing this TV title to the fact he won the match play, just smashing everybody out of the water. But I think one of the keys to his success this week was that he got out the blocks early in pretty much every game. I don't remember him being massively behind, apart from the Adrian Lewis game where he was up against it a little bit and fought back. But everybody else over the longer format, he got out strongly, was competitive on his own throw, pushed his opponent on their throw, and made it count towards the back end when the pressure started telling on his opponents.
Yeah, he did. And look, if that's something that you've got to give up, you've got to give up a little bit at 1 or 2 points of the average to have the ability to just dominate a match from start to finish. Then surely you're always for that. And Peter Wright had everyone at arm's length, as you say, from pretty much round one. Keane Barry tried to push him, but could get nowhere near. Peter Wright just kept him at arm's length, kept where he needed to be. And to be honest, these first 6 are quick matches. Adrian Lewis potentially should have had chances to beat him. Now, we all know how that one unfolded, and potentially we'll talk about that soon. But yeah, it was a really good performance from him. And I know we're going to say that the averages weren't brilliant. And yes, look, over the weekend, not to average 1 ton plus is pretty poor. But at the end of the day, it's a tournament win. And it's a tournament win that, despite the averages, was pretty convincing for me, especially sort of the semi-finals. The final was close, but against the MVG, against Johnny Clayton, he dominated. I was really excited to see Peter Wright playing well again. So I did think he was falling out of form before the Grand Slam, but you cannot write someone off that's won a World Championship and has just won the final tournament before the World Championship.
To beat 2 of arguably the top 4 players in the world right now, if not over this year so far, so convincingly with his B game pretty much, is pretty tough to do. What we're going to do now, folks, we do have a couple of little clips of the winner and the runner-up, Peter Wright and Ryan Searle, for you. So we're going to play them in reverse order. We'll hear from the runner-up first, possibly one of the most graceful runners-up I think we've ever seen in the PDC. Then we'll hear from the tournament winner, Peter Wright. Then we'll deep dive into anything else that happened earlier this weekend. Then we'll look at the player youth final, and then we'll move on. So first of all, this is Ryan Searle.
Believe you can get into that top 10?
Yeah, I'd like to be there, but I'm in no rush. I've said all along that if I can play my game, I'm up there with the best. I can beat anyone, and I look forward to next season.
Ryan,
I didn't hear him. So my deaf, I'm getting old, deaf, and I didn't hear him at all. That was, as I said, I played in Rotterdam against Barney. I played against Michael with 10,000 people booing me, and I've still beaten. So it doesn't matter if you boo me. It doesn't matter. It's just, if you enjoy boo me. I don't care.
dress rehearsal for the World Championships. You go there full of confidence. You promised us back in June that you were going to do the double. One's done.
Yeah, one's done, and obviously I'll get on the practice board, make sure I'm ready for it, because obviously everyone else is going to get ready for it. It's going to be an amazing tournament. I just, fingers crossed, things don't change and we're going to have a crowd and everything like that. That's the main thing, because that's what, we need the darts fans in there, and they're amazing, that we want to perform in front of them, and that's what it's all about.
The Fab Four, as it's being called. Michael stuttering here, Gazzy stuttering, Johnny not at his best. Are you now the favourite for the World Championship?
Not really, I don't know. I should be, really, but it's up to the bookies, but it's up to them. They're forwards. They don't put me favourite, so they'll lose money if they don't.
Peter.
What a character. Plenty said there from Snakebite. Let's start with Solo. Just a short clip. Is he a player that you look at and just think, I want a little bit more from you in those situations? I want a little bit of you coming out and saying, actually, yeah, I will be a top 10 player, mark my words, or yeah, look, I'll turn up and I'll beat these players, rather than I hope so, I'm not in a rush. Don't get me wrong, it's a very laid-back mentality that we see from himself, but it is quite different to what we're used to of top level sports players. A lot of top level sports players are likeable. Not every single one of them is, but they all have that. You have to have that arrogance trait as a sports person that genuinely makes you believe that you are the best at something. If you're going to be the best at something, you look at the best players in the world; they can come across brilliantly. Tiger Woods. You look at LeBron James and Michael Jordan, etc. In basketball, you look at Messi and Ronaldo. They're not always beating their chest and shouting about it, but if you ask them who's the best at something, they will tell you it's them. And Ryan Searle doesn't seem to have that about him just yet, does he?
He doesn't, but he echoes the same sort of things we were hearing about Johnny Clayton last year. To be honest, does Johnny come out and boast about his achievements in press conferences? Not really, and he's a really likeable guy. And I think all I would really like to see from Searle is a little bit more emotion on the stage. When these big shots go in, we just want to see a little bit of emotion to the cameras. Just not necessarily beating your chest, but the little finger point we get from Johnny Clayton is enough just to acknowledge that I've hit a good shot there, and you've got to appreciate that. That's all we really want to see from Searle. But as far as a gracious loser goes, you compare that interview to what Adrian Lewis came out and said on Twitter, and it is night and day. Let's not beat around the bush. If there's any young lads or young women watching this, Ryan Searle is an advert for taking a loss and then just rebounding from it. He's not worried. Yes, he's still a young lad and he's got plenty of time left in the game, but he hasn't taken it to heart, and he's just accepted that you can't win every tournament. It's his first major final, and he is going to rebound. But yeah, for me, it's just a little bit more emotional on stage. That's all we really want to see from Ryan Searle. As far as the game goes, and as far as the mental attitude goes, I think he's spot on.
Yeah, look, Lee, plenty of people will be surprised by that line of questioning from me, as somebody that has questioned some of the players at the opposite end of the spectrum being overly aggressive, perhaps in their celebrations, or the way they act on stage, or the way that they carry themselves. Gerwin Price, for one, I'm not particularly keen on the way that he carried himself in interviews and the way that he can come across overly rash. But I do think there's a happy medium somewhere in the middle that makes you more watchable, more likable, more relatable to people from back home, fires you up a little bit, but also there's just that little something about you.
See, I'm quite the opposite to Lute. I think in the sense of what he's doing at the moment, I wouldn't be looking to change anything down into the Worlds. He's got that, how he speaks is how he also comes across. He's got that very relaxed sort of approach. And that's what's got him to where he is. Maybe there is a difference, not maybe, there definitely is a difference from the step to where he is now to actually going on to being one of the best players. Probably the next step you're looking, obviously, is like winning something down into the Premier League. Those sort of steps are there to be made. But he seems quite calm about that step will happen, but just when he's ready for that to happen. For me, I don't think he should be changing sort of his game yet. He's got himself into his first final. He's got himself, if Peter Wright doesn't hit that double 16, he's potentially got his hands on the title. It'd have been interesting to see with him how relaxed he is coming to 3-match darts for his first TV title. Would have been very interesting. For me, I'm quite the opposite, to let him carry on as he is. Let's see where we can get to. It's too early for me for sort of the Premier League tour. I know I've sort of just wound a few people up in the chat by dropping in while the videos are playing. I think it's right in the sense of now he hasn't won it. Questions would be different if he had, but now he hasn't won it. There's 10 players, and we seem to always talk about now for different reasons, whether it's a winner or Fallon or all those type of different variations for the Prem. For me, it's not right that Ryan's in it this year, but he's had a very, very good year. And I only see that getting better next year. Whether that's a push from where he's in the Worlds to then being in the top 10 is different, but I expect him to at least maintain the level he's had this year. And if he can do that in 2022, I would say that's another very good year. You've not always got to make that huge step up. You can be steady.
You mentioned the Premier League, though, and that was part of the reasoning behind my question. And then Jamie makes a very, very an observation in the chat room. I'm hoping Jar's noticed it as well. That one. Searle's lack of ego is what will keep him out of the Premier League at the same time. We've literally spent the last 2 to 3 weeks talking about how you need to be a character in darts in a sport at the minute that is dominated by who is more marketable. It doesn't matter about your results. You can force your way into that Premier League, don't get me wrong. James Wade looking very likely to do that at the minute as a top 4 player. That is the only rule. And let's be honest, there's still potential that the PDC change their bloody mind on that rule. Ryan Searle, I think, would potentially fall into that category. He's brilliant for darts fans. He's brilliant for the sport, that he's incredibly relaxed. He's got such an easy action on the eye, etc. But does he do enough off the oche that isn't just throwing the darts for him to be included in the biggest exhibition on the planet of dart players that people want to see going at each other and selling you a story?
Yeah, I think both sides of that, even on the just looking at the playing side of it, not the old commercial marketing piece or anything else that people bring in the media or anything like that. For me, I still think it's 12 months, at least 12 months too early for Ryan Searle to be in the Premier League. Even from I think there's 10 more I think who are in a better place than him, and I think it's better for him as well. So I think another 12 months where he can be and what he can achieve in the next 12 months will put him in a better place instead of going into the Premier League a year or two too early, as we've seen can have a knock-on effect to many players.
Yeah. Again, staying on the Premier League just shortly, we're going to hear from. We'll discuss the incident from the weekend very, very shortly. But as we're talking about the Premier League at the minute. We've seen Peter Wright say that he would put Fallon Sherrock in the Premier League after she was involved in the draw earlier. We've seen Gerwyn Price say the opposite. He ruled that out completely the other week. Here is Adrian Lewis talking about whether or not he would put Fallon Sherrock in the Premier League.
I know I've got a lot more give than that. That was just a starter kind of thing, and that's what they're missing to me. I think the characters aren't the same as what they were. I think there isn't enough characters in the game at the minute to push the game forward. The only good thing I can say is Fallon Sherrock coming through. I think she's been a breath of fresh air to anybody, and I thought she's awesome.
On Fallon, as you pointed out, would you put her in the Premier League?
I think before the Peter Wright game, I'd have questioned it because it was a short format game she's always played in. After the duration, what she performed in that tournament, an average 100, after, was it 30 legs? Oh, well, yeah.
Might have a few feathers.
It might do. I just hope she can get a tour card. But also, like I said to you earlier on off camera, Lisa's been a bit overlooked in my opinion. I think she's the one who's got the tour card. So I reckon we open up, put 16 players in the Premier League and make 2 women. That's what I say.
Can't help but think that last line was perhaps to suit Adrian Lewis's shout for a Premier League spot as well. His TV record has not been fantastic of late, but the campaign for Fallon Sherrock to be included in the Premier League continues to gather pace, and we're just potentially 5 weeks away from finding out that lineup. I'm not sure the exact date, but it must be something close to that. Talking of Adrian Lewis, it's almost as if we planned this show, by the way, the way that we're just transitioning into it. He was involved in arguably the biggest talking point of the weekend. It was up on stage against Peter Wright in the round before we started talking about the weekend earlier. After the game, Peter Wright and Adrian Lewis had to be separated by security. Lewis led the match 3-1. Snakey fought back, wins a decider, but had earlier accused Adrian Lewis of finding a loose floorboard on the stage and making sure that he stood on it when Peter was throwing it. All kicked off a little bit. Adrian Lewis said some things on social media. The PDC poked fun at it by saying that they should send a Christmas card, which potentially might happen with proceeds going to charity after Adrian Lewis laughed it off towards the end after he calmed down after about 2 hours. I think social media started to respond a little bit better to him. But we did catch up with Peter Wright after that game as well, as he was the winner. And this is what he had to say on the situation.
Adrian Lewis has been quite vocal on social media. I know you said you haven't heard it. Will you take a look at it?
No, I'm bothered about it, in the comments or whatever like that. Do whatever do. People, if they want to put stupid messages on there, put stupid messages. So it's up to them.
I have a lot of time for Peter, right? And I'm not going to comment on the incident anymore. People have seen it. It's all over YouTube, etc. That was just his thoughts. But in the space of 2 clips that we've played on this show tonight, Peter Wright has effectively said, come and get me to everybody booing and come and get me to everybody on social media. We've seen Gerwyn Price take that approach before, and it's not gone down too well for him over the last couple of years. It's a bold strategy to nick a phrase from Dodgeball Luke.
It is. Let's not beat around the bush. This dismissive attitude that he's got sometimes maybe come across as just a bit arrogant, really. But equally, and this is where I think, and to be honest, Adrian Lewis is one of my favourite players. Maybe for nostalgia, maybe for anything else. When we've got a flow in Adrian Lewis, he's brilliant to watch. But equally, incidents follow him around, and it's not. And I don't think that's a coincidence. He's got a brilliant, arrogant attitude, and that's what's winning the world titles. But at the same time, that's his biggest downfall because he cannot take a loss, and he doesn't take it well. We've seen it too many times on the Pro Tour and on the big TV stage. He has arguments with players all the time. So I think to some extent, people, yes, maybe when Gerwyn Price had his incident with Gary Anderson, that was sort of a cut and dry thing that he overstepped the mark. But with Peter Wright, it's a little bit like, well, we all sort of know what Adrian's like. So, is there some truth in the matter that Peter Wright wasn't really in the wrong and Adrian was just clutching at straws? I think maybe the attitude was the wrong way to take it. But because it was Adrian Lewis and not somebody else, I think he'll probably get away with it. Yeah, for this tournament, he got booed a little bit in the final, but that'll soon be forgotten because I don't think he's not going to get fined for it, I don't think. And it wasn't anywhere near the same extent as what happened in the Grand Slam of Darts final a few years ago.
Yeah, completely agree, Lee. And Lee, look, I'm a big AD Lewis fan. I think Luke is the same. But there was one little bit that did make me chuckle about it. And Rose has just said exactly the same thing. He's like, I've been involved in this sport for nearly 20 years, and I've only ever fallen out with 3 or 4 players. That's just not true, is it? We can sit here and list every single time Lewis has been involved in a bit of to and fro. Peter Manley, Jose Justicia, you've got Peter Wright falling out, you've got Giraffegate Awady, which perhaps isn't classed as a fallout, but it's certainly up there. Adrian Lewis has got a little bit of a reputation for this, and it precedes him far more than he thinks it does.
Yeah, and that's 3 or 4 he's saying. You've just named 4.
Yeah, Nicholson that
are on stage.
Yeah.
This is not off stage where a lot more conversations happen. 3 or 4, maybe putting those numbers together might be closer. 34 could be a closer number than 3 or 4.
Well, the first time I was ever at the match play, back-to-back years, was the Gerwin-Price fallout 2 years in a row, where you can't practice crapping yourself, as the quote goes. That just...
Yeah,
yeah.
It's part of his game. I don't think he's ever going to change it. And we've looked at, as much as it is a positive to have everything come across, he's got to play that way to have that sort of arrogance about you. I've always been like that with anyone. To be arrogant, you've got to be able to back it up. At the moment, he's not. There was parts of it. If you want to look at his weekends, just very briefly, if you look at the hybrid stain, that's the arrogance you want. You've just fired in back-to-back ton plus checkouts. You've got something there to back that up. Then when it's stuff that is coming out in the bat, I'm not a big fan of. But overall, that incident aside, it's a better Lewis than what we've seen at the start of the year. Hopefully we can see him coming back, and he's asking for 16 players in the Premier League. I'm totally with you on that, Dob, that is nothing to do with the fact of putting 2 women in. That's thinking, well, if there's 14 spots instead of 10 that I can fight for, it puts me in a better position in 12 months or 24 months' time.
Especially if he has a nice run at the World Championships, because we all know how that can turn your fortunes around. Boys, one more little word on Peter Wright then. Look, wins the tournament pretty comfortably with his B game. We've seen him win 2 TV events this year, one with his A game every single round, one with his B game pretty much every single round. He's going to need that A game to turn up again, though, if he's going to win that World Championship, isn't he, Lee?
He is, and especially with how stacked the bottom half of the draw is, pretty much anyone who's going to face in the semi-final is going to be of a very good quality. So he is going to have to stand up and play well. There's no way you can go through on your B game to win the World Championship. Either Johnny Clayton, Gerwin-Price, or Michael van Gerwen of this so-called Fantastic Four is going to do well, and they are going to play well, and you're going to have to play really well to beat them. But look, if anyone had offered him the last title before the World Championship, he'd have bitten your hand off. So let's just see what happens. It's a brilliant tournament to win, and he should be full of confidence. Let's see whether he holds his promise up and can win the match player and the World Championship in the same year.
Will be interesting indeed. Let's move on to talk about the World Youth Championship, boys, as we have a new World Youth Champion. I'm sure this will throw out plenty of debate in the chat room around what a youth player is, as well as it pretty much does frequently. And before we do move on, a quick reminder, good folks, if you haven't already, do please click that like button on this live stream. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our content. We're going to be here for all of the World Championship and beyond. Q School Live will return. We'll be doing live stream of every single day of Q School action next year. We'll be covering the WGF World Championship, the World Seniors, as we are the official media partner of that. And moving on, we hit 17,000 subscribers today. So thank you to every single one of you in the chat room that is one of those. If you're not, you are certainly missing out. Click that subscribe button, click the bell icon so you get notified every time we go live. That will also include the live league, which is on daily at the minute in potentially the most exciting lineup we have ever had on that at the minute. We have gone international, boys. It is absolutely superb. Right, on to the World Youth Championship, and we are just going to go from the top 16 because there was plenty of games in the groups, but I'll talk you through the top 16 that made it through. Nathan Rafferty made it through to take on Jack Mayle. Adam Gaulas took on Callan Ridds. Gert Nenches took on Liam Meek. Barry Keane. I've nearly gone them, folks. It's Keane Barry, not what we like on this channel. Keane Barry, Kieran Tian, Kevin Dowitz, Bradley Brooks, Rusty Jake Rodriguez, Lewis Pride, Ted Evitts, Neil Zonneveld, Keelan Kay, and Louis Williams. A truly, truly incredible lineup, boys. But I think that was pretty much guaranteed, considering the strength of the field before we even got to the knockout stages. The group stages were absolutely stacked with the 32 players involved this weekend, and I think that was definitely the right move to make, upping it to 32 as late as the PDC did.
Yeah, the right move in regards to upping it, and the right move for me running the event across the same day. Initially, I thought it was across the same weekend. I thought it was going to be Saturday and then Sunday night the final. But even that, the same day, we saw a quality final that had probably potentially been question marks if we hadn't, with it all been on the same day. But generally, I thought it done very well. Massive shout out to Jar. I know who covered it on the day and kept up to date with everything that was happening. But it was a quality field, and it was quality action throughout the day. And just looking at the draw, just some of the names like Louis Williams, you're expecting to have a good run, being knocked out 5-1 in the last 16 game against Keelan Kay. Examples, Zonovel, Ted Everts, just a couple of those quality games that we had in the last 16, and this is the youth. And it goes back to when you was talking about the draw, and both you and Luke mentioned it, that we've got so many of these young players in the world draw. The reason we have is the quality they're showing throughout the year on various different tours.
Well, let's do this. Let's show you folks what happened in the group stages. It's amazing what we can do on this software as opposed to Phil being in charge. There we go, boys. Hopefully that focuses a little bit for you. In Group A, Jack Mayle, Callum Ridds made it through. Owen Roloffs and John Brown were the ones to exit. Group B, Adam Gowlas, Nathan Rafferty, Reece Coley, and Joshua Richardson missing out. Joshua Richardson, the former BDO Youth World Championship winner. Jared Cole finishing bottom of his group. This is how competitive it is. Jared Cole finished bottom of a group that includes Shizuka Nakamura, Keen Barry and Liam Meek, the ones to get out of that one. Dom Taylor was leading the development tour order of merit through the first weekend in the UK. He finishes third. Victor Manuel Rodriguez knocked out also. Lee Lok Yin and Tobias Fisher missing out to the international players. Fabian Schmutzler rocked up as a 16-year-old to the EU Development Tour second weekend because he wasn't old enough for the first weekend. Will be at the World Championships. We'll talk about who he's got very, very shortly. He's knocked out in the group, as is Jurgen van der Velde. Nico Springer, Sebastian Bielecki, not to leave for either of those two. And Michael Verbeek and Cameron Anderson also exiting, boys. So that left us in... That's the group. Let's hide that one. Into the last 16 where this happened. Nathan Rafferty beating Jack Mayle. Adam Gowlas beating Callum Ridds, boys. Arguably the favourite for the title this year. Callum Ridds qualified as the top youth player on the PDC as a tour card holder. That's a very, very surprising result in that one, Lee.
Yeah, very surprising. Ridge was the one that was heavily tipped, especially to that further. If not, go on and win it. When you're in them latter stages, sort of anyone can go on and lift that title with a performance and how good they are in one day. But Callum Ridge expected him to that past Adam Dorlas, not playing at for me the level that we've seen him play previously. Had a decent World Cup, but surprising winning was the shot of the last 16.
Yeah, Nenchez, the Dutchman, beating Liam Meek, another 100 average. The fact that the youth tour produces 100 averages so frequently these days is absolutely frightening, especially at this top end. These averages are pro tour averages. Let's not beat around the bush. Keen Barry beating its compatriot Kieran Tian 5-1, who we saw at the World Championships before. The reigning World Youth Champion was beaten in the last 16 by Kevin Dowitz, the Dutchman, dispatching Bradley Brooks of 104 match average. Some performance. That Rusty Jake Rodriguez 5-1 victory over Lewis Pride. Ted Everts convincing win over Neil Zonneveld, the tour card holder. Keelan Kay beating Louis Williams 5-1. Keelan has been playing in the live league throughout the year, as has Nathan Rafferty, by the way, and he's involved today. On to the quarterfinals, and it was Rafferty that beat Adam Gowlas. Nenchez beating Keen Barry, perhaps surprising that one, boys, especially Luke, after Keen Barry played so well up on stage against Peter Wright earlier in the weekend.
Yeah, and I think this is why it's very difficult, and I know we'll probably touch on this about where you get the distinction for like the youth/development, because there's a few players that are in here, like Rids, who I think is already developed. He's top the Pro Tour Order of Merit theoretically. No matter what his age is, he's already a professional darts player. Keane Barry is someone that I think will benefit from being in the development tour for the next couple of years, even though he has a tour card, because he can still play against the top lads in this tour, and he can't beat them week in, week out. He's not exactly dominating the tour, so it was interesting that he did get beat by Nenches, especially, as you say, from what we saw against Peter Wright. But obviously it's a fine line and it's difficult, and I know people have criticised Ted for being still in the World Youth Championship at 24, but Keane Barry's still a really young lad, and he's potentially got 6 more years. So who knows how many World Youth titles he could potentially collect. He hasn't won this one this year, but next couple of years, let's see what happens.
Yeah, look, we'll get on to the age debate, no doubt, very, very shortly. But if you look at the age of the last 4 winners, I think it is, 23, 24, however, Brooks was, I think he was 21, and then another 24. Certainly makes for an interesting conversation. Kevin Dowitt's continuing a good run, beating Rusty Jake Rodriguez 5-1, some victory that, and Ted Evett beating Keelan Kay. On to the semi-finals, the last games that were played in Reds, and it was Nathan Rafferty beating Gert Nenches 5-3, and Ted Evett beating Kevin Dowitt 5-1, boys, before the final, in which we have a new World Youth Champion and one of the most successful development tour players of all time, Lee, bowing out with a World Youth Championship. Yes, he's 24. Again, we'll talk about that in a second, but it is a fitting end to Ted Evett's development tour career.
Yeah, he's been one who, obviously, we've seen him with a Tard and then lose a Tard, but on this tour, he's just been incredible. The amount of titles he's picked up at Top-Loft, I believe, this year as well. In that final, there was parts of it where, especially early on, where you thought Rafferty's potentially Dodimir and that experience at the Slam would have helped. But Ted Evett, he deserves a title. I think what he's done himself in this, in the, whichever we want to call it, in the youth development, whatever sort of terminology we're using across the years, he's been so good. So massive congratulations, Ted Evett, and I'd just love to see him now have a dud run. It seemed like he had a bit of a knot on, and I know there was an interview sometime this year, a bit of a knot on from the Fallon defeat. Not just him, we've seen experience probably Mensur and the effect it's had on him once and potentially now twice. It'll be now, hopefully, we'll see that confidence from Ted, and we'll see him push on next year. Say next year, hopefully down into the Worlds.
We will indeed. And Luke, a word on our runner-up, Nathan Rafferty. He's had a decent year, Grand Slam participant, not to be in the World Final, but he does look a solid talent as Nathan Rafferty. His action is very easy, very free-throwing. Potentially, well, he did miss out on Q score earlier in the year, but he's got to be up there in contention for it this year, surely.
Yeah, if I remember rightly, Nathan had a family on Madai early on in the year, and that's the reason he missed Q school. So he's rebounded really well, and fair play to him, because towards the end of the year, he's come really good. You know, the Grand Slam was brilliant to watch. To make it out of the groups, nobody really would have called that. So he did himself justice. And again, to make the World Youth Final, he's qualified himself for the Grand Slam probably next year, unless they change the rules. So he's done well. The Grand Slam could become a bit of a grounder for him if he can get through another group stage next year. But again, I'm pretty sure Nathan's still got a few years left as well. He's only 2021, so you never know. He could be another one that could potentially win a World Youth title in future years. But he pushed Ted hard, and a 93 average in the final is pretty solid. He's got a good action. He looks like a player for the future, and I'm excited to see how he develops going into the next couple of years.
Most definitely. Indeed. Ted Evett then is your new World Youth Champion. Boys, we've beaten around the bush for a little bit too long now about the age debate. It's been going on in the chat room. It's been going on social media, as you get inevitably every year since the likes of Dimitri van den Berg won back-to-back titles at the age of 23 and 24. And I think this is just another branch in the conversation that perhaps the PDC need to have a rejig of all of their, I don't know what the word, all of their competitions really, in the way that you qualify for different things. We've seen backdoor entries and the like of certain competitions. We've seen double chance to qualify. Now we've got the debate over World Youth Champion. Obviously, that used to be the Youth Championship. Now it's the Development Tour. So should it be called the Development Championship? But does it quite sound as good as we've seen Dan Dawson arguing on social media? It's quite easy for us to have that conversation with. And Andrew brings up a very good point that United Nations regards youth for someone between the ages of 15 and 24. That's just 1 year difference between what the PDC allows in their event. Niall's in the chat room as well, boys. Luke, we'll start with you. Is 24 too old to be a World Youth Champion?
Look, I think you're developing the player, not the age. I don't think it really matters. And yeah, I'm not saying that we should start throwing potential 50-year-olds that are just coming into the sport into a World Youth Championship. But at 24, you're still a young man or a young woman. And I think that for that reason, I don't mind the age being as it is. What I have got an issue with is Pro Tour players who are very much at the top of the game, the likes of Callum Ridds, who's within the top 10 of the Pro Tour order of merit. He's qualified top outside the top 32 seats this year for the World Championship. Surely his development journey's already been done. He's won 2 titles on the PDC circuit this year. Does he really need to be playing the development tour? I then look to someone like Keane Barry, who hasn't won anything on the PDC tour. Yes, he's won a tour card, but I think it's going to do him a lot of good getting that experience of playing against the young lads. And why should he be disadvantaged because he's got a Pro Tour card when he is still well within the age bracket? For me, I don't think 24 is too old because players come in at various ages and I still think you're quite young at that age. So I haven't got an issue with that, but maybe there has to be a cap that says if you're in sort of the top 48 players in the world that you can't play in the World Youth Championship. And I know some players would be really disadvantaged and someone like Ridds might feel really hard done by for that. But you've got to ask yourself the question, if you are a player, are you developed? You've already won titles. What more is there to do that you need the development tour for? So I don't mind it too much, but I think there has to be a cap that once you get to a certain level of ability, you can't play in the development tour anymore.
I think that's an important distinction to make, Luke, is that I have absolutely no issue with anybody within the age range competing in the World Youth Championship. They're good enough within that age bracket. That's absolutely fine. The issue I've got is the minute you have a tour card, you're one of the best 128 players in the world, regardless of your age. That's where I draw the line. I know that you can't play if you're a top 32 player and they might start edging that further back once you're in a PDC, but if you are good enough on that day to go and win yourself a tour card, you are developed. You're one of the best 128 players in the world at that moment, according to the way the PDC system works. You shouldn't be getting the opportunity to go and hone your game elsewhere against players that are trying to work their way up to be at the point where they can be a tour card and professional dart player. That is ultimately the difference between the development tour and the Pro Tour, and that's where I've always had an issue with. Even as somebody that's played it before, I have been the benefactor of the age rule. I, at one point, I'm pretty sure, the oldest player on the tour, because you have to be 23 or under on the day of the World Final, the day after the World Championship Final. My birthday was 2 weeks later. Luke Humphries was a month after that as well. At one point, me and him were the 2 oldest players on the tour, playing at 24 for pretty much the entire season. We were 24 for nearly 3 months before the tour even started, but we were eligible for the entire year. So there's a big difference between my ability and Luke Humphries' ability. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, it's even as a benefactor of it, that's the line I draw. It's the tour card issue I've got a problem with, not the age bracket they put on a development tour.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That for me, there's so many different tours now, and I'm even going to throw the women's into this. For me, if you're on the main PDC tour, you should not be participating in a second one. The only people who should be participating in a second tour are the reserves, who then end up playing on the main PDC one in the Pro Tour events. And that is just because you are a reserve playing in that event. And that's a step up. Every other tour apart from the main PDC one is in theory a step down. So if you are then able to play on that level below, it for me just doesn't seem a bit right. But just obviously someone who has benefited from it is Ted, having that experience of playing on both, winning the titles that he has over the years, and has seen him now go on and win that title at the age of 24.
Well, you look at the players that have come through that production line, if you like, Luke Humphries, Dimitri van den Berg, Jeffrey Desvan on his way to the top 32 player that he was. You've got Ted Everts involved in there. We've got Bradley Brooks. We've got Nathan Rafferty. It has produced this absolute procession of players, but I just think that standard is competitive enough there. And look, Andrew makes a good point. You aren't really developed. Some of the young players do get smashed on the Pro Tour. It was their decision to go on the Pro Tour. And that's got to be a decision that they make if they're ready or not. I still don't think that because of their age, even if I'd been in that position, there should not be the option to play in both. Once you're in the Pro Tour, that's it. You're in the upper echelon. Look, Q School may well be a lottery, but again, you're at Q School with the intention of becoming a tour card holder. You're at Q School with the intention of hoping to be a professional dart player. Yes, you might be there to potentially hope you're a challenge tour player, but at that point, I'm not sure I agree with that mentality. You've got to back yourself to go and be a tour card holder. Aaron Beanie is one of the prime examples of that. Some of the early youth winners are nowhere now, Tommy. Yeah, perhaps. Look, some of them have certainly struggled. Aaron Monk, James Hubbard are two of the ones that spring to mind. Two fantastic victories over Michael Van Gogh in finals, but have struggled since the game has moved on. But you think those finals are what, 10, 12 years ago now? The sport has evolved massively in that time, especially at the grassroots and youth level. And some players just have not been able to make that transition. There's plenty of names being thrown around that you can talk about as a good player back in the day that hasn't quite brought it onto a pro game. Not everybody's cut out for it. So look, there's people in the chat room said about Q School being lucky. I don't agree with it being lucky. You're not going to get lucky 4 times. And if you do get lucky 4 times and you're lucky enough to go and get lucky on a pro tour, that's not luck. There's got to be some sort of ability in there. You're not going to throw 3 random darts at the board constantly and keep making your way through. You have to have some level of ability. That's just how it works. And then you have the decision to decide to progress on it. I'm going to bring this a little bit full circle before we move on from the youth discussion. And I completely forgot about this while we spoke about that final. But we do have Ted Evett's interview from after the game. We'll listen to that one. And then, folks, who kept you waiting long enough, we do have the graphic ready to go. We will talk about the World Championship draw in a little bit more depth and how it all pans out. But this is Ted Evett's.
That's a bit like Humphreys, isn't it, really? Last opportunity, and I think it shows a bit of guts, really, if I'm honest. But, no, do you know what? I said at the start of the day to Owen Roloff, I'm going to win this today. And he goes, oh, like 20 quid, 40 quid, like, come on. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And the first game came up, 3-0 down. I'm thinking, oh, I'm 40 quid out of pocket here, kind of thing. But no, as soon as I started to find the ball today, it was kind of like, it was going to have to take something great to stop me, kind of thing. Like I was finding good finishes at times. I mean, I've had a 134, 150, 170, decent times. I mean, the 150 and the 170 to win matches earlier, and the 170 to get onto the stage game. So it showed a lot of guts today from myself, I think, and it's just teach that to myself a bit more and kind of believe a bit more.
Believe key, especially after he was obviously the man that lost to Fallon Sherrock, most famously at the Ali Pally. It's been a bit of an up and down couple of performances from Ted since then, but he is the World Youth Champion in, like I said, his final attempt, similar to Luke Humphreys, and it was thoroughly deserved after coming through that field. Right, boys, it is time to hide our faces once again, because that's the only way I can get the graphic up on the screen, or I'll ask the man in the background to do it. There will be an overlay of the World Championship draw in all of its glory. There we go, boys. Let's take a look at that. Let's go quarter by quarter, shall we? Quarter number 1 going. I'm not reading it all out, boys. Any ties that stand out for you, Luke? Apart from, well, even the ones we discussed, but let's remind people.
Well, I think first off, it's got to be Steve Beaton against Fallon Sherrock. Look, we were all looking for a name coming out the draw. It's going to be interesting. Steve hasn't been on great form, but if he turns up and can average sort of 90, 95, potentially he takes a couple of sets of her and pushes her quite far. But then if she does get through that round, Kim Hybrex is someone that's coming into a really good bit of form recently. So that could be a little bit of an interesting one for me. And then you look at the one just below that as well. Ross Smith against Jeff Smith, really disadvantaged by winning the Continental Cup tournament and getting himself in as an international qualifier rather than a Pro Tour qualifier. Ended up with one of the better Pro Tour players in Ross Smith, who is another one coming into form, and then potentially facing Stephen Bunton in round 2. So Jeff Smith's got his work cut out if he wants to try and make it through to round 3, and we'll have to see what he gets from there. But them two, definitely in that first section of the draw, really do stand out for me.
Yeah, Lee, what takes your fancy?
Yeah, I'm just moving down and looking at section 2, and it's hard to not look at that German tie of Florian Hempel and Martin Schindler to meet Dimitri. But just a couple up from that, we've just spoke about him in a bit of depth. Ted Everts coming up against Jim Williams. We've had question marks before about Jim Williams, especially early on in tournaments. Proved us runs at the Slam. If he can turn up and we can see the Ted that we saw in that final, that's going to be a very, very interesting first round. And not only that, how difficult to tie that is first round. The Ted Everts and Jim Williams meet Joe Cullen, and Florian Hempel and Schindler meet. The winner of that meets Dimitri. So it's not as if you've got a very tough first round and not as difficult seeded draw as there is some in that 32 you'd like to draw. Dimmy and Joe Cullen have very, very difficult draws.
Yeah, and look, without being disrespectful, if you glance quickly at this draw, if you wanted to be in a section, I think you might pick this one at the minute. The way that the qualifiers and the players that have come in, there's some very, very good matchups, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't look like there's any out-and-out superstars that you absolutely dread playing at the minute. They look like all the games match up pretty nicely. I think every player in that draw will be fancying their chances. There's none of them that are going to look and go, oh, I've got an absolute nightmare. I've got to look. They're all going to work their ass off between now and the World Championship, but none of them are going to go into the game petrified of their opponent. And even when it translates into the seeded players, I still think there's an argument that every single player in that draw could get through their first round game and their second round game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that section. There's names you look at, obviously, that in section 2, people like James Wade, Mervyn Tind, I know they're two of you boys, people like Dimmy. As much as there's no surprise if they don't want to net to the semi-finals or finals. The thing is, they are also players, all three of them, who at times can just not turn up and we not see that game. And all of the majority, probably not say all, but majority of that section can then punish those players. So it's going to be very, very interesting. Like I says, there's those couple of ties in the first round, but then when we get to the second round, whoever comes through them first round ties, it's going to be very hard to pick a winner, and they are all going to fancy a run in that. Even if you looked at someone, I know he was on last week, someone like Devon Peterson, you'd have said to him before the draw today, you'll get the winner of Jamie Hughes and Raymond Smith. Jamie Hughes had missed, obviously, the players due to COVID, and hopefully he's all done and well and back playing. But Devon would have taken that draw, and then once you've got that one win on the stage, we've seen how it can inspire so many people. So I think that draw can open up for a few of them.
Most definitely. Luke, on to section 3. You've got the honours once again of the top right-hand corner. Give us a brief overview of that one and your games of the round in that part.
Yeah, so I think for first round games, I think Suter against Portela, it's obviously nice to see the South American representation there. If Portela can turn up and sort of play his A game, Suter started the year so well, but has tailed off slightly. That could be interesting. Either of them will fancy their chances against Mensah-Suljovic, someone that's out of form. He's one of the seeds you would have really liked to draw. So a potential route into round 3. And in round 3, you could potentially face Jose de Souza, who again isn't playing so well. So anybody in that mini section of the draw will be fancying their chances of potentially having a little bit of a run to the last 16. Another one I look at is Brendan Dolan playing either Callum Ridds or Yuki Yamada. Ridds is coming in as the number 1 seed on the Pro Tour Order of Merit. He's won 2 titles this year. He's in form. Dolan's coming off the back of a semi-finals of the Players' Championship. He's in form. That sets up a brilliant clash in round 2, first of 3 sets. Let's see how that one goes. Potential tie again in the next round against Nathan Aspinall or even Mernon or Paul Lim. The fact that we're seeing Lim make, I think, his 27th appearance at the World Championship, but I may be mistaken there. Again, a stalwart of the World Championship, 2 contrasting styles in both Mernon and Lim, but then in potentially Lim and Aspinall. So it sets up a few interesting ties. We'll have to see how they go, but there's a few ties in that third section. I know we said about the second section not potentially being the strongest. I think, to be honest, we're looking at 1 and 4 as a bit of a really tough section, but 2 and 3, I think you'd happily take being drawn in those sections. I think some of the seeds are a little bit out of form. Wright isn't and is coming in with some form, and so is Ryan Searle. But the bottom half of section 3, you might fancy a chance against some of them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to add my 2 pence to this section. A couple of years back, we saw a young German make his mark on the sport. He looked very, very good up on that stage, and Nico Kurtz. Fabian Schmutzler has the opportunity to do that this time out. Ryan Meikle in the first round, but potentially a matchup with Peter Snakebite Wright in round 2. Very, very exciting talent. Keep your eyes on that game. Indeed, Lee, you get the honour of talking us through this section 4. And I must say, mate, I take the mic, but this is 100% an honour. You will struggle to find a better draw than this for a quarter segment of the World Championships.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'll be the only one talking about this section. I've not been on Twitter, obviously, because we've been on here since, but I'm assuming that's blowing up as of section 4. Section 1 looks very impressive. As Luke just touched upon 2 and 3, there's a few draws that you'd like to be in. Section 4 is just, for a player, it's absolutely disgusting. From a fan point of view, it's absolutely brilliant. Just a couple of the ties that stand out. Obviously, John Norman was a name we was all looking forward to seeing who he gets. Probably not the most interesting name or opponent that could have been matched up, but someone who's been informing Chaz Barstow with a winner playing MVG. But then the 2 standouts in this quarter are Adrian Lewis coming up against Matt Campbell. Hopefully, we'll see the Matt Campbell that we've seen before and that we've seen get to the standards, not the one we've seen at the Slam, and Ethan pushed Lewis all the way for them meeting up with Gary Anderson. And then I know Jonathan Eaton is the number 1 fan of Barney. He's got Lawrence Ilander to take on Rob Cross. What a draw. It's that quarter, and I've only touched on 3 of those. We've got players like Nick Kenny, then Roby John Rodriguez, Nick Kenny coming through today, Ethan Tate on Luke Humphries. All looking at the seeds in this quarter, it was going to be a difficult quarter anyway. With Barney and Adrian Lewis also coming into this quarter as unseeded players, it just makes it even better. It's the quarter you want to avoid. I know we always, when it comes to football or anything, it's a group of death. This is definitely the quarter of death. It's for a player, it's horrific. It really is. But for us, it's going to be brilliant to watch. And trying to pick who comes out of that, obviously, most people will side towards MVG, but there's a lot of names in the mix.
I mean, every single line of this section just has something intriguing. You look at the seeded players that we haven't really touched on: Dobie, Luke Humphries, Daryl Gurney in this section as well. Ian White finds himself in this section after a tough year. And not only that, he's potentially got a world champion as his first game. Scott Mitchell waits if he gets past Chris Landmann. An absolute stinker of a draw for anybody that finds himself in that bottom quarter. Right, boys, you know the score by now. We're not going to go through every single game, but I am going to ask you for your 4 semi-finalists.
Oh, give me a chance.
You look confused, mate.
I was expecting this, like, what's our pre-world show, 2 weeks today?
Okay, we'll ask Luke for his, because we possibly won't see Luke again between now and the start of the World Championships, Lee. I'm just trying to work out still who gets out of this quarter, so I'll pick him 4 semi-finals. All the best. Is that? It's 3 other quarters to focus on. I'm putting you straight on the spot.
Right. I'm not going to go with the obvious options because I know for a fact there'll be some shocks. So first off, I don't think Price makes the semi-finals. It's an outlandish call. I don't think he makes the semi-finals. I think Clayton gets to the semi-finals. There is going to be an all-Welsh class. Johnny Clayton will knock Gavin Price out. He is not defending that World Championship, right? That's the first shock. Now, Section 2. I don't think it's going to be one of the top 2 seeds in this section to get through. I don't think Wade or Dimitri Vandenberg will make the semi-finals. I'm going to go for Christopher Ratajski. I know the Polish Eagle isn't rated well on TV. I think this time round he gets it right, and I do think he gets all the way to the semi-finals. He's going to have he's got a pretty good draw in the first couple of rounds. If he can get past Mervyn King, he steamrollers Dimitri Vandenberg, and he gets to the semi-finals. Section 3.
Say the line. If he makes the semi-finals of the World Championships, will our producer for the day admit he's a different animal on TV?
I believe he's an animal on TV. I think he's coming good, and I think for me, Polish Eagle, he's one to watch. He's a one to watch. Section 3. Obviously, I have just said Peter Wright should be coming in as the favourite for the tournament. But again, I don't think Peter Wright is going to win the World Championship, and I don't even think he's going to make the semi-finals. Again, another one. I don't think he's going to make it. I actually back probably Ryan Searle to make the semi-finals of the World Championship. Whether he'll win it, I doubt that. But coming off some good form in the Players' Championship. I think he goes all the way to the semi-finals of the Worlds. Let's see what happens, but I'm going to go with Ryan Searle. Then in Section 4, I don't think MVG makes the semi-finals either. I think there's going to be a World Championship of shocks, right? I just don't see any of the big four, other than Clayton, making the semi-finals, right? Honestly, I thought about this long and hard. I don't think they will make it. Section 4, I'm leaning towards Rob Cross. He's coming into some form. He's got a very tough draw in the second round against Remy van Barneveld, but he's starting to find that ability to win games again. If he comes up against Michael van Gerwen in the quarterfinals, I see a repeat of the result in 2018. He's going to make the semi-finals, and who knows how he plays. And from there, does he win the World Championship? Who knows? Who knows?
And I thought my predictions for the Players' Championships were a bit out there after I said Adrian Lewis would make the semi-finals. I mean, I got Clayton, but I think most people got Clayton. I can't remember who else I had last week, Lee. We didn't even touch on that because it was just a bad week for all of us. None of us back Peter Wright, surely.
No, I think I had like MVG Humphries or something in my final, maybe.
Standard. Yeah. Miles up.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have Wright or Searle.
Yeah. Luke, if I was you, I'd close your eyes while the chat room moves on a little bit because you're getting a little bit of stick for some of those predictions.
You know what? Right, I'm going to come back onto the fallout bar.
Winners, 2 years in a row. Yeah.
So, are we having his finalist and who his winner is, Dob, from that pick?
Yeah, go on then, Luke. Finish it off.
Right. So Ratajski's going to play against Johnny Clayton. Ratajski's going to take a 2-set lead. But Johnny Clayton's he's going to get rolling, and he's going to continue this form that we've seen all year. Johnny Clayton ends up coming through that one. It's quite a close one. It's 6-4. But Johnny Clayton's going to make the final. Cross and Searle.
Precise. I feel like you're doing Mystic Mardle right now.
Look, we'll see. If this all comes true, then I'll give you the lottery numbers on the 3rd of January. But we'll have to see what happens. If I got 2 of these right, I'd take that because I think there's some shocks in there. So if 2 of them come right, then you know what? I'll hold my hands up. I am a bit of a Mystic Meg. So Cross against Searle. I think this one goes long. I think Searle wins at 6-3. I think Searle makes the world final. I think from that point onwards, he gets put into the Premier League. But that's the story for another day. We'll see what happens after the final. But Searle makes the world final.
Bombshells all over the place here, mate. Jeez.
Searle, people in this chat room are going to think that I'm just away with the fairies. But genuinely, there's always shocks in the World Championship. And if you're expecting the top 4 to
fairies are believable, mate. I think you're away with far worse.
You know the shirt on the back of his wall there, Ginola. I believe that Luke's been in the tassel with David Ginola. I think with some of those predictions.
The final for me, I'm going with the Ferret to win the World Championship. I think he comes out a winner 7-5 against Ryan Searle. I think we're going to have a World Championship to remember. It's going to be full of shocks. We're really going to enjoy it after a fantastic draw. I think it sets it up really nicely for Christmas. Let's see what happens. Maybe I'm miles away from what actually happens. But if Johnny Clayton or Gerwyn Price don't make it through, I would be shocked. If Peter Wright, MVG, and Gerwyn Price all make it through the semi-finals, I will eat my hat. There's no way that is happening this year.
Jonathan, we snipped that little bit there. That was Gerwyn Price, Peter Wright. It was the other one, and MVG. Like the semi-finals, he'll eat his ass.
There's no way all 3 of them make the semi-finals.
I will buy you a new hat, my friend.
PB is in the chat room. He says the Michael van Gerwen question has been asked. I cannot remember what the Michael van Gerwen question is, but we've been promising that we'd ask him the next time we spoke to him. I think it was if he could have one dart back, which one would it be? Yes. That question has been asked, which hopefully means that'll be up on our YouTube channel shortly. And hold on a minute, boys. I'm just getting Phil Bars' predictions for the World Championships in my ear. I'm not wearing anything, but Fallon Sherrock wins the first quarter. She beats Gerwyn Price in the 3rd round, then beats Michael Smith. Not to be for Bully Boy once again, but he goes deep and he will be in the Premier League because he deserves to be in the Premier League. In the 2nd quarter, not James Wade because don't like him. Dimitri Vandenberg will make it through. In the 3rd section, we're going to go Nathan Aspinall. Why not? We'll go a little bit out there. And in the 4th section, Michael van Gerwen is the most dominant player that ever lived. Smashes everybody off the board to 0, and he makes it to the semi-finals. That was Phil Bars' predictions for you here on the live lab. We'll see how close I am in 2 weeks' time, shall we?
We shall.
Come on, go. We want to hear what are you saying? Who are you saying?
Oh no, because I'm definitely going to change my mind more than once between now and the next time. As well.
I've got to put you on the spot. If you want to change your mind between now and then, you can have different opinions. But come on, if I've sent my outlandish predictions, you can't leave me here looking like a fool. You're going to have to come up with some predictions that might potentially happen.
Immediate reaction to the draw before I take a proper deep look at it and actually write some stuff down before Barzi asked me the question. And next time we do the prediction with Phil hosting and whatever, if it's different, let me know. If it's the same, then brilliant, because that means I'm actually pretty consistent. But I don't tend to look back at what I predicted. Section number 1, I'm with you. I think Clayton gets past Price. I just think he's solid. I've got Johnny Clayton. I thought Johnny Clayton would win the Players' Championship. I'll be completely honest. I thought the World Championship would be a bit too far. And I'm not saying Johnny Clayton is going to win the World Championship, but I do think he makes the semi-final. I think he's absolutely solid if he gets out in front. Section number 2.
Christopher Tyskie.
It's difficult not to. It is difficult not to. That being said, though, I've got to go Wadey. I still think this could be the year that he has a run. I was very, very worried about his form before the last.
I don't believe.
Grand Slam.
I don't believe you've just done in at Phil Bars around picking MVG, and then you straight away have done for James Wade.
Hear me out, though.
But earpiece, I've done it coming in from Dom predictions.
Before that group game against Rob Cross, absolutely not. At the Grand Slam 2 weeks
James
ago.
Wade is up moving team in the same section, so the time meeting the final, mate.
Yeah. Fine. Before the Grand Slam group game against Rob Cross and then the performance later on as well, absolutely no chance. But he's back hitting maximum. Took a very, very good performance from Daryl Gurney to beat him earlier this weekend. I know he doesn't particularly like the venue or the format or anything like that, which is why I think he makes a semi-final, but no further, which gives you a hint. I think Johnny Clayton makes the world final. Section number 3, Peter Wright, 100%. The man's promised he's going to win it. Tells us he should be the favourite. So that's where we're going to go with that one. And section number 4, Gary.
Ooh, okay. No words needed. Gary Anderson.
Just Gary. He's just got the ability to rock up and give it a go. Potentially about to lose first rounds with Adrian Lewis or Matt Campbell, but at the same time, if he gets his teeth into it, Ian White, that's a nice little part of the draw, considering that entire quarter, I think, to work his way up. And if he gets going, look, I've looked back and said that Anderson was poor in the year that he made the final against Gerwin Price previously. I don't think he was that bad, actually. It felt bad watching, and it didn't feel like free-flowing Anderson. But if you go back and look at all of the numbers from that year, they were actually pretty consistent and pretty solid for a gander that we said was in absolutely no form at all. He looks a little bit better, looks a little bit more determined. Practicing with Ryan Searle, if they get some practice time in between now and the World Championships in a couple of weeks' time, they'll only push each other on. So I'm going with that one, but I'm going to go for a Johnny Clayton versus Peter Wright World Championship final, and Snakebite regains the Sid Waddell Trophy. You heard
you know, I completely agree with Lee. I cannot believe you've just had a go at Phil for picking MVG when you've literally gone for Wade and Wright to the semi-finals, like the most predictable lineup you could ever have gone with. I'm sure you've said that for the last 15 tournaments.
If Wade is in any other quarter, no chance. No chance. I don't back him to get through it. But he's in the nicest of the 4 quarters, in my opinion, on first inspection. And he's started to play well. He's turned a corner recently. Shocker haven't backed Gerwin Price. Haven't backed Barney, so give it a rest, Jar. I can see that comment. No one else can. And look, are you going to back against Snakebite? Silly boys. Silly boys. The man's told us he's going to win it. So that's where we're going. Lee, we'll come to your predictions the next show or the next time we do our big World Championship preview show. It is 9 o'clock already. We haven't done question time yet. So we're going to go to about 20 past, if that's okay with you two. We are still pretty early in terms of this week. Lee's face says no.
Let's say 10 past. Let's be
10 past. Let's fly through it then. What we're about to do now, folks, is announce the winners of our giveaways from last week's 50th ever episode. Now, I don't know who's won these. Jar is about to flash up the winners on screen. I'm hoping he's done them individually. So first up, we should hopefully have the winner from the program. And to win the signed program, what you had to do was tell us how many times Philip Bars said the words 100% in our first ever show. Now, I only actually found out the answer to this earlier by asking Lee, because he hadn't told us up until this moment. And I'll be honest, it's not as many as we had hoped. I'm trying to spin this out a little bit longer, Lee, before you tell us the answer. See Jar typing away frantically, flashed it up and disappeared again. How many times did Phil Bars say the words 100% in our first ever show, Lee boy?
I can 100% confirm that he said it 7 times. Just 7?
Just 7. The numbers, people went pretty high with some of the guesses from what I remember. Hopefully.
What I will say was on the first show, there was only, I think, about 48 minutes of coverage. So in a normal 2-hour show, and as we was last week, 2.5 hours, you'd I think that number was probably 20, 30s, but there was only 7 in show 1.
Yeah, I absolutely dread to think how many he says on a full 2-hour hit. But hopefully the winner is about to appear on screen. I believe they predicted 6. So you were the closest. Hendy, if you are watching. If not, we'll drop you a reply to your comment last week on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Drop us a message and we will get back to you on that one. Next up is the winner of the signed board from the World Seniors Qualifiers. It's signed by both of the qualifiers, Richie Howson and Kevin Burness, and also by Helen Chamberlain. There was no real criteria for this one, so we have random generated the winner from this from everybody that commented on the comments of last week's show, and hopefully the winner of that one is about to pop up. Andrew Kinsman, congratulations, buddy. You've been here an awful long time. You have won the signed darts board. Drop us a DM on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. We'll get back to you and we'll get that one posted out to you as soon as we can. Hopefully once Barzy's returned from the far northeast back down to his hometown and picks that board up where it's currently in Southampton. That's a bit of a trek, Newcastle to Southampton, so give us a bit of time to get that one to you. 10 minutes of question time then, folks. Get in the chat room and fire away. We will flash your questions up on screen this week. It's absolutely our pleasure, Andrew. Do we have any previous questions to pop up, Jar? No, just people laughing at my Phil Bars impression.
I think the reason there's not as many as normal is because we've obviously done the show a bit different with a World Championship. Watch London, we've seen that, but there's one in here.
That's the one. Saw this earlier from Henry, and he's waited the full length of the show to flash it up again. Should the 10th Premier League spot be left until the Masters again this year, like it was in 2021? I think, boys, we're allowed the PL discussion now. It's late enough in the year. There is just the World Championships in front of us. We can mention the P word. Luke, I will go with you. As it stands right now, would you leave that 10 spot open?
100% yes. It added so much of a different dynamic to the Masters. Usually quite an unexciting tournament. You suddenly had Johnny Clayton and Mervyn King in a one-match shootout for a spot in the most, potentially one of the most prodigious tournaments in darts. So 100%, it really added a new dynamic to the Masters. It was really quite exciting this year. So definitely would do that.
Lee, how about you?
I'm not convinced.
There's obviously no guarantee, by the way, that the Masters winner will be awarded that spot. Last year, as Matt Port said, it was a complete accident that's the way it left out. They were going to pick a player based on performances. It turned out the 2 players that hadn't qualified for the Premier League as yet made the final, and at that point it became a shootout, which was absolutely the perfect thing to do. It was Mervyn King against Johnny Clayton. How different would this year have been, by the way, if Mervyn King had won the Masters instead of Johnny Clayton? How ridiculous is it a notion that this started the spiral of one of the most successful TV title runs in a calendar year ever?
The year of 2021 wouldn't have been as good. That's all I'll say on that one.
Without Merv winning? What's your mouth out, good sir? Merv's on the wall,
the one for me is we're not going to have that situation. Probably if you look at the next 5-6 years of finals, the chance of us having 2 players in there who are not already in the Premier League is going to be slim. I've not looked back over the previous years. I'm sure someone will jump in and tell me if I'm running with odds. But moving forward to have then a tournament where you've potentially got the quarterfinals where 7 of the 8 are already in the Premier League, potentially, and something like that. Do you then give it to the lowest place? I just think if you're doing it for the Masters, you've got to have it set that. Do you have it set that it's the winner of the Masters or it's this player? How do you position that? For me, if you're doing that, you probably pick 8, and then you have 2 sort of wild card picks at the end of the Masters, one of which is the Masters winner if they then go on and win it. Does it seems a bit unfair that you've got someone sitting potentially on that sort of basis? I know there's going to be the question mark around Q-Stall and a certain person potentially then the tour card. It's those sort of picks. What do we name 8? Do we name 9? Do we name 10? Do we do Adrian Lewis and name 16 and put everyone in it? It's obviously that's not going to change within a state 10. We've seen the format release, but for me, I don't think you do it just on that basis, because you just got to be careful that you don't get to a Masters and everyone's done. There's different pressures as well. You don't think those 2 players didn't know until the final. If Johnny Clayton knew at the start of the weekend that winning that, does he still play the same way? There's potential questions that maybe he doesn't, because that fear, that the nervousness on each winning dart means he's one step closer to the Premier League. It's one of those he didn't know nothing about. So
there is another issue in that leaving it that late, the way they did last year, sets a precedent. And if it were to fall to a winner that they don't particularly want in the Premier League, as we know, it's pretty much a decision on a whoever. To then go against that would be incredibly interesting, again, in terms of the way that the PDC operate. So leaving it open-ended, look, there was a comment about they'll leave it until after Q-School as well. Potentially, the cynic in us suggests that won't be necessary should Fallon Sherrock, is it reach the 3rd round or win in the 3rd round and reach the 4th round? Because
reach, I believe, it's winning 2 games.
The 3rd round. So should Fallon Sherrock secure a matchup with potentially Gerwyn Price, at that moment, she'd be playing the world number 1 and world champion to potentially knock him out of defending his title, as she secured a tour card and would virtually then be in the Premier League, absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's going to be an interesting one. We can say what we want about Sherrock. It comes down to the commercial value, and to be honest, I don't think the PDC would have her as a wild card pick. That one probably comes down to whether Sky want her on the TV every week, and realistically, if she's got a tour card, then I think the commercial value, they probably will go with it. So maybe she's a shoo-in if she does get through the 3rd round and gets a tour card, but without one, I think it's very difficult to see them giving her one, because I think the backlash would be pretty horrendous. Yeah, I still think for me, leaving the Masters as an open-ended competition, yes, it does open the PDC up to potentially having a player that they didn't want in there that's won a major title. But to be honest, Wade's already won the UK Open, so if he wins the Masters, he is definitely a shoo-in. But I don't know. I think, look, the PDC can be seen to try and divvy up who they want in and who they don't. But if the player wins the Masters and they've left it as open-ended, then I think it's a foregone conclusion that they get put in. So it's a risk they've got to take, but it adds value to a tournament that otherwise was pretty unexciting. So I don't see any other option than leaving it until after the Masters again, because it works so well this year.
Yeah, Luke, on that, I'm not opposed to it completely being the Masters winner, then that's in. I just think that need to be careful that if you get a tournament, then that we've built it up to be that the winner goes in, but then you've got a quarter-final or semi-final, more than likely semi-final, final, where you haven't got one in. It's what then do you do with that one? Have you already got that name ready and publicly ready? Are you hiding it that someone's been told? And not only that, it's a turnaround. We don't know, as Dob alluded to earlier when we were talking about fans, we're not sure as well in the COVID position we'll be in. Hopefully we'll be where we are today. But that Masters, and then I believe the Masters ends on the Sunday, Premier League starts on the Thursday. It's going to be very... If we're in the state we're in now in the UK, then we should be fine to have sort of a late decision. If we're not, I don't know how they can do that with that 4-day turnaround. I agree there needs to be more on the Masters. It needs something. It needs a different feel to it, and that Premier League certainly gave that last year. But it only gave it in the semi-finals and finals when that conversation was starting, I think.
No, I think that's a fair point, and you're right, because there's not many Masters that I can remember where we've had 2 players that weren't already in the competition for the Premier League both playing each other for the final in an effective shootout. And there's every chance that we could have like a Wright against Price final. And then, there is no waiting on that. So it does completely depend. I guess if you've got 24 players, there's more of a chance that an outsider gets in than if you had 16. But I think, to be honest, you still have to put some weight in. Let's say 2 players that were in the conversation made the semi-finals. I think you've still got to consider those performances in who you pick. But maybe they had someone in line, and if there wasn't a run to a final, then they're already secure, something like that. But I mean, we discussed this last year. If Clayton had only made the final, only made the semi-finals, and so had King, who would have got selected then? And it would have been a difficult conversation to have. But it leaves it as an open door, but I do think it's worth taking the risk of not having someone definitely ready. And as long as we are, you're right, if we're in the same position that we are now, then they can afford the late turnaround. But if not, then potentially someone has to get picked slightly before, because it is a late turnaround this year. Yeah,
100%. Plenty of questions in the chat room. We'll go with this one from Craig. We are going to wrap up very, very shortly, as Lee has elsewhere to be. Apparently we're not good enough for him an hour before we be finishing the show. It's not like he's not normally sat with us until 10:15 every week, but we're not good enough for you, pal. That's absolutely fine. You just want to go and watch the Gerwin Price documentary on ITV4 that everybody's making fun of me in the chat room for. Craig says, did I hear right from Jarlath? There's a fallout bar every night during the World Championships. You know it, buddy. We'll be getting our rota sorted out amongst ourselves very, very shortly. But that is the entire premise of that show. For every week-long or greater televised ranking event, we will have a fallout bar, and that'll be back for the World Championships. You can ignore your family members for just that little bit longer. We'll be here to talk you through all of the action you've just seen. King Cook, if Wade gets displaced from number 4, do you think Sky PDC will snub him for a Premier League pick? I have my opinion on that. Phil Bars has the complete opposite opinion on that. I don't think he should get snubbed. But there are plenty out there that will say that he will, because he did get a backdoor entry last year after Gerwin Price had to withdraw. He's getting to the Premier League final last year, good enough to guarantee Jose a Premier League spot next year. It was good enough for Nathan Aspinall last year. Whether or not it'll be good enough for a player that Sky didn't particularly want in the lineup previously is yet to be seen, especially as he is struggling of late. I think Jose de Sousa needs a good couple of performances at the World Championships to remain in contention for that one. And then, Jamie, what do you think the odds are of a Price versus Gando repeat? Look, complete opposite quarters of the draw. They both have to come through tougher sections of the draw right now. But I can certainly see it happening, as I've backed one of them and I've backed the other one to lose to his compatriot. But if he does do the job over Johnny Clayton, I'd certainly think that section is between those two without writing anybody off. Gents, I think that is enough for this evening. Thank you very much to everybody that has joined us this evening from the World Championship draw watch along all the way through our usual ramblings. Don't forget, please, folks, to like the stream before you do disappear, subscribe to the channel, and all that jazz. The Live League is back tomorrow. You can catch that one and what lineup it is, as we've already mentioned. Plenty of interviews still to come on this channel. We've got John Part ready to go very, very soon. I believe there's a Peter Manley interview somewhere in the pipeline. Phil Bars has been up in Newcastle this weekend and has asked Michael Van Gogh in that question that everybody's been itching for. He's also had a sit down with Glenn Durrant, which we're hearing has been very, very good. So don't forget to stay tuned for all of that as we build up to the World Championships. Christmas is here. Lee and Luke, thank you very, very much for joining me this evening, and thank you to Jarlath in the background for flashing everything up on screen so we can focus on just chatting nonsense. We'll be back next Monday night with the Live Lounge. We'll be back to the usual lineup of myself, Lee, and Phil Bars. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
2 multiplied by 10 plus 1. Romeo done. Let's go.